the
Yeah.
food
Are we?
chain. It's insane. Like these minds, and then not only the minds on the call, but like the called out network, and then like the people, and like this shared. It's like for me, food is like just teed up so well. Like there's all this stuff that's like kind of going off, and like it's over here and it's over there, and you can just feel it all just going like boom into form
Yeah.
in all aspects of the chain, you know, from seed to harvest to distribution, all of it. Like I don't even, I can't get my head around like
Yeah.
all the things that this is gonna shift.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, hey Amanda, great welcome. We're just having a little we're having a moment
I'm
here
just
of
over here
like
like,
we j- we just finished, yeah,
wow.
we just finished seed for food, and it's just like whoa,
Whoa.
whoa.
Like we're like feeling like we're doing a thing, and then this starts happening, and like because we dialed in all the ideas and everything, and it's like, oh my god.
Yeah. It's like it's you know when you go on a walk through a rainforest or the redwoods and you just like you're just in awe of the elegance of nature.
Mm.
That's how I'm feeling about this emergent process. It's like it's got all of the elegance of nature in it because it's just like people people want to be invited to bring their life mission into a container where they're a co-creator of that becoming a reality, and it's just like, oh, what if it was so simple?
Mm-hmm.
It's just
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, it's really
And
beautiful.
then, and like at the end of this call, the people, the individuals that spoke on it, you can feel they're ignited and that much more motivated because they're sensing and feeling all these other things outside of them that they weren't aware of that are also happening that resonate with what they're doing. So you can just feel their ignition of like their an inspiration to go forward. It's rap.
Yeah, yeah.
Well done, Lucian. You led that whole call. You dialed in all of those ideas, and like
Mm,
just very quickly, props to you.
mm,
That was very fucking well done, brother.
mm.
Well done.
I love it. I love it. It's like, the muscle of like the systems change muscle. I
You're just
freaking
firing,
love
dude. You're like, put more weight on. It's not enough. Put more weight on.
Yeah, it's great. It's my like favorite thing to do in the world. So well, welcome Shane. Thank you again for showing up every day. Amanda, great to have you here. Um, this is actually a moment I think would be for us to think through what our intention is. It's our last day before the collective sprout. Um, so like, how could we be most helpful for us
Yes, Lord.
collectively when we present the kind of outcomes of the Sound Technology Guild with Sound Helix? It feels like I've been talking about this with numerous people, Shane, because everyone that hears like self-playing bowl and like an organization to take on crystal tones and like that, that it would have a cultural layer on top as well, which is like phenomenal competitive advantage.
Yeah,
Like phenomenal. It's like crystal tones doesn't have anything like that.
no, they
So the
don't.
one for one, like the Tom shoes of sound, I talk about the kind of meta concept of resonance. I can see when an idea is like hitting exactly on the tone. Super excited to support this, and I think as we go in tomorrow, the first thing I'd say is like, please feel free to invite others that you think could be collaborators with the guild going forward. I think keeping this to a max of 8 people in a guild is a good thing. Otherwise, it gets unwieldy. And funnily enough, that's what we've seen with the other guilds. Is it's like the other guild has got 8 people, and the alliance has got 8 people. But thinking who we can invite in that could be collaborators and co-creators for Sound Helix tomorrow. Feel free just to go into the calendar invite and invite them. And then What we thought we would do is Amanda's gonna take us through a journey for the first 8 minutes from 11 to 11:08, call it like 11:10, and then we'll have the Sound Alliance. We'll share the outcomes of that call. You've both been part of that, and then it's you, Shane. Will do call it like 11:35 kind of thing, and then then we'll close up with sound portal at like kind of 12:05, something like that. So
Oh, you're talking about tomorrow.
yeah, we'll
Oh,
do.
okay. I thought you were talking about right now. I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah, yeah.
we're doing all
No,
that right now?
So the fundamentals
Did I miss something?
yeah, no, tomorrow, just as
Yeah,
as,
okay, cool.
as a as a structuring of the day, and we will live stream the whole thing. I will live stream to my Facebook as well. So if anyone wants to create a watch party, what happens when 20, 30 people that are like have got deep networks and sound all create watch parties is suddenly you like reach a lot more people about something happening, which
Hmm.
is again demonstration of like unfair cooperative advantage. Like by designing a new business in a cooperative way, the whole idea is it's not just an accelerator. It's like you're birthing through like an ecosystem. So yeah, Shane, how would you like to go from here?
Um, in I guess in a certain respect, because I guess in a certain respect, because I've worked on this so hard and it's been such a passion project for me over the years. I don't think there's really much left to support because I have most of all the nuts and bolts. So, um, and not to say that there isn't a space for more ideation and collaboration within the field. It's just more so of like even like right now, like I'm sitting here like writing out the timeline, and even as I'm like sitting here writing the timeline, it's like becoming even more clear to me of like, oh, this is how everything would roll out. At least provocatively, like if it all uh, followed followed suit. But then also in one respect, like I'm not, as I'm writing the timeline, I'm not like planning it, I'm like channeling it, like because I'm trying to see like, okay, like what is the rollout, should everything fall into or rise into space in the way it's supposed to. And it's interesting looking at the implementation of how like kind of like year one would be kind of the focus of sound healing and like getting all the product, like refining the application for the crystal bowls, bringing the crystal bowls to market. Then after a year's worth of revenue generation in providing that content and that product to the market, we can then by like end of year um, by end of year 2021. um wait, because we're in 2020, right? Yeah, sorry. Okay, I'm like, this whole quarantine is time is a very like struggle right now for me. um but then by the end of 2021, after all the revenue is generated for almost approximately about a year, and this is with all the idea that Sound Helix would be up and running by like December of this year, so that we get all the nuts and bolts, get all the funding, get all the prototyping done, and then we have the product full fledged. The MVP is probably done by like I'd say September, October. We go through a couple of refinements, begin to actually produce units, and then by December we actually do full launch. Then by December of 2021, after we've spent a year doing revenue generation, then we can begin either self-sourcing, like internalizing funding from the company to begin what's it called, uh, beginning the research and development for Fractal Robotics. So Fractal Robotics is going to be the company for the robotic arms. At least this is what Spirit told me to channel it as. And then
Fractal Robotics.
Fractal Robotics is a new company, or is
it'll either be a subdivision of Sound Helix, or it'll be, because I know we had this conversation the other day about like, do we create subdivisions? Do we create different companies out of it to keep the because the other aspect that I was thinking about, and I was actually talking to Andrea about this the other day, that I think for investors, I think it'll be easier to keep the company separated. So then that way the equity share is also different because of the way that we can kind of populate the way that the revenue comes in and out of the companies, and then the way that they can kind of establish their own agreements and contracts rather than it all having to be and I'm just speaking openly, like Lucian, if there was any particular areas of interest that I would have in your expertise, this might be an area that I could use some support in, of what your thoughts are, what your recommendations would be. But from what I can tell of the way that I've thought about the business structures over the years, there were certain aspects where I was like, in the beginning, I was like, no, everything should be under the same table. And then I started to realize, like, wait a minute, no, I think it's actually better to keep them somewhat separated. So then that way, the aspects of the revenue and then also the equity, if investors are going to be jumping in on it, if instead of it being fully internalized from our own self-funding, that it's easier to kind of streamline all the numbers and like do all this kind of stuff.
You can still have that in separation, but I'll have it all under the same umbrella. You just set up an LLC essentially as like Sound Helix, and then you have subs for anything else you want to do, and that's good too. Separate things in regards to taxes and equity and all the things that you're talking about.
Well, from my understanding of what we did, and not that I want to fully subscribe to that what they said was the right way to do it, but we should actually incorporate, from my understanding.
Yeah, so now that's the LLC, a limited liability corporation.
Oh, yeah, and you there's a few different structures that you could be here. My intuition says to have like one brand here. Sound Helix is the company. It could be a B Corp, it could be a C Corp, it could be a LLC, it could be a co-op. And you could structure the robotics aspect of it if you wanted to, like if it was a liability question, there's other ways of solving that issue than creating a separate company, a separate cap table. Generally in the early days, simple is best. And often I find entrepreneurs kind of make they get kind of caught up on the organizational structure. I know from my own experience, I describe it as like my megalomania.
Yeah.
In that often it's like I spend an unhealthy amount of time planning for XYZ, and like being like creating the most beautiful XYZ when I haven't got to B yet.
Fully.
And so that's a tendency I see. Like a lot of entrepreneurs actually get kind of caught up on the the kind of the corporate structure question.
Right.
I mean, for Savannah, like we spent 2 years speaking with lawyers around structuring, because I was like, when you know you're creating a lightsaber factory, make sure you create blue ones. And it's like, so we ended up like coming up with a structure where we're a 501c3 and a wholly owned LLC, and then that LLC can can create its own cap table, and but it's kind of owned and structured by the foundation.
Right.
It's kind of like the Mozilla model. But what we're actually doing with Unified Planet is what we were thinking about doing with Savannah, which is a Swiss co-op. It's actually called a Genossenschaft.
Okay.
And that's like Genossenschaft is like the original. It's like the original cooperative structure. It's like it was back in the Industrial Revolution when people were like abusing the rights of workers. There was a move to create like essentially like unions that became cooperatives around food and housing and farming, etc. And just in the pendulum of history as it swings and rhymes, the just in the same way as the Industrial Revolution was leading to abuse of workers' rights, the peak capitalism has led to the abuse of the rights and the sovereignty of individuals right now. And for example, like, you know, Facebook has too much power, Google has too much power, Amazon has too much power. And so in the thinking of like, how do we create a planetary checks and balance for these kind of like corporations that have become frankly more powerful than nation states, what is a way of doing that? And our thinking was a platform cooperative that could
And
be.
that's kind of and that specifically is kind of what I'm speaking to in this particular instance. And this is actually partly why I want to break them up rather than keep them all under the same corporation. To almost essentially have them all be their own DAOs, but they work as a co-op.
Well, this is something that our intention with the Unified Planet is that we could give you the essentially infrastructure for these to be created as DAOs. And
Right.
so the more we could work with you to create like a real life case study of how this would look,
Right.
you know that I think this.
I think this is it. I think this is the real key. Like energetically and shifting into what we call this a unified planet. Like this is how it's done. This is the foundational frequency.
Yeah, because
How it's going to be set up that is going to set us up for success and co-op and like a real, you know, the one for one, like all of that is going to be lifted up by doing this instead of falling into what feels like to me old paradigm.
yeah, I mean, and that's kind of why, you know, because I guess to maybe share a little bit more about the reason why I was going in this route was because when it comes to Sound Helix, when it comes to Fractal Robotics, when it comes to Shamanka, and when it comes to the Helix Temple, the way I'm building the timeline is basically how all this is strategizing in terms of like how Sound Helix funds Fractal Robotics, Sound Helix and Fractal Robotics fund Shamanka, and then once the three arms are together, they fund the full unit, which is the wellness center, which is the Helix Temple. And so then within that operational structure, at least from a global aspect, this is why I wanted to keep them separated. So then that way, one, you know, like from an accounting perspective, yes, we'd have to do probably a lot more work, or we'd have to have different accountants, or we'd have to have just one person or two people like taking care of all the numbers, like from all the companies, or having all the numbers literally filtering through one big corporation that is then, you know, kind of subsidized like all the other arms. So and you know, one thing that I don't want to say drilled in our heads, and not that I'm fully subscribed to it, but they were, you know, the Founders Institute was like, get your organization structure as clean as possible before you incorporate. So then that way, you know, because doing more of the pre-work than trying to change it down the line when you're trying to either like, you know, break things apart and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, Lucien, you made a good point about Facebook, and this is kind of particularly why I wanted to keep it broken up, was because I just didn't want people coming, I don't want to say after me, but just after Sound Helix as a whole, because we are going to own so much of the market in so many different aspects. And this is where, you know, in terms of transparency, you know, I wanted them to have a little bit more, you know, like, what's the word? Not that I want everybody to be able to know everything that we're doing, but I want everything on public record so that there is that level of transparency, so that they know, you know, like how the money's being spent, where the money's going, all of this kind of stuff. So then that way, you know, if people are like, oh, you're just like hogging it all, it's like, no, actually we spend 60% of our revenue on philanthropic stuff. So it's like,
so few thoughts here, Shane. One is I don't think any of these structuring things could need to come into the presentation tomorrow.
no. I'm just speaking.
Cool. Yeah.
Just not that I wouldn't bring that up in the presentation. More so, this is just a conversation that I'm having.
Totally. Second thing is, alongside the one-for-one model, I think it would be really powerful for every person that purchases a bowl to become a shareholder in the company. A few organizations have done that. I think Divine Chocolate, things like that. There's been some like B Corps that have like issued offerings, stock offerings to their customer base, their loyal customer base, and that can be really powerful.
Mhm.
Third thing is I invested in a company, funnily enough, called Upstock. And it's Casey Fenton, who's the founder of great guy, and he's the founder of Couchsurfing.
Okay.
I always joke with him; he's got more people laid than anyone I've ever met. But Upstock could be a really good way of like looking at the initial structuring of this.
Yeah.
And I would say, like, to me, just based on what you've said, I would create a Delaware B Corp.
Yeah, I mean so when I was part of Founders, so there's actually I meant to tell you guys this the other day, but I'm happy that we're having this conversation now. So under the articles of agreements that I had with Founders, I'm technically not allowed to start anything until 6 months after the program finished, which it ended in February. So this actually kind of works in the timeline anyways, just because of the way it's like May now, so that gives us about, give or take, about 3.5 months to fund without fall, because basically what would happen is if I started the company before
Let's have this conversation offline.
Okay,
cool. And then yeah, I think the Upstock could be, the timing of all of this, I think, is going to be based on the momentum we can get with like funders, with partners, etc. And this could be a really good case study to think about how we could incubate this as part of the Unified Planet as a DAO and give you the ability to kind of be a self-contained DAO. And the way we've done it with the Unified Planet, we kind of thought about the structure, like how we would be an accelerated accelerator. And what we would say is like any money that gets invested in Sound Helix through the Unified Planet, 10% of that transactions goes back into the Unified Planet for others that have been involved in like supporting that. And so, and that model, it's essentially reimagining the concept of tithing. But tithing into this kind of like planetary, like a good comparison here to look at is like Mondragon, which is in Basque Country, and it's like one of the biggest corporations in Spain, but it's completely cooperatively owned. And so what we're thinking when it comes to Unified Planet and how that could support Sound Helix is like it's a bit like a planetary Mondragon, where Sound Helix is essentially like a kind of like a fractal within that ecosystem that is independent, that you can get your own shareholders and partners, but you're benefiting from being part of this platform cooperative that is Unified Planet.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Founders had a kind of similar model where, but it was like per like semester interim, where so like when you attend the program, if you end up graduating, all the graduates end up basically getting well, the Founders Institute basically takes about 10% of your company. They take 10% equity. That 10% equity is then split between the people who graduate, so the people who are in your cohort, and then 10% a percentage goes to the mentors. So all the mentors that came through the program that helped you through the process, and then like a certain percentage goes to the Founders Institute itself to keep funding the school, to fund the mentors. So, and part of the application was so that everybody is all emotionally invested in everybody succeeding. And so this was kind of the way that everybody was remunerated without it, like kind of being a huge impact on taking a major portion of equity from your kind of structured company.
Yeah, and that's like a common accelerator model that I think would be really cool for as we think about many players of the game
Yeah,
all having like fractal ownership of all of the organizations that are
yeah,
becoming members of the game, like
yeah.
members of the each
Mhm.
individual alliance, and so suddenly like it's this is what I'm getting at by like reversing a multi-level marketing
Sure,
company,
of course.
flipping the pyramid,
Yeah,
so that you know, imagine imagine if like by 2030 a billion people could have a fractal ownership of Sound Helix.
yeah. I mean that was the yeah, because I mean I know the from the perspective of being able to issue stock, the capacity of within co-ops, like when you buy into a co-op, like you have a voice in it. It's not just like, oh cool, like I'm just giving you guys my money. It's like there's more there's more value of exchange for your cooperation and also your participation in it. So and for me, like that if I got a check for $5 every month, because I bought a crystal bull, or like, or if the company ended up selling and all this kind of stuff, and you get all this remuneration from it, like whoa, like and all this, so anyhow,
Well,
we can talk about all that stuff later.
that's how we've been thinking about this. Is you know, what if we think about stars being both like an equity equivalent and a cash equivalent, it's kind of dual
Mhm.
purpose, and
Right,
that stars are essentially functionally shares in the co-op,
right.
but they also have a cash exchange that one star equals $1 pegged to the dollar on a particular day, Earth Day. There's a whole thing there that's going to be fun. Um, but stars become a way for you to use as a currency inside, like for Sound Helix. And so that would all get set up for you. And how we've been thinking about this is like seed, sprout, blossom, harvest is for the 26 games that we're going to run each year, like 26 different topics, that everybody that plays those games, when they actually come into the playing field, which is what we are in right now, or the sound stage, the seed stage, for example, is everybody that's part of that we invite in to be part of those teams from seed to harvest are getting remunerated at 2 stars a minute. So 2 stars a minute is essentially like the first week is it's 6 hours for seed stage, and then this is like 4 hours, and like we're kind of like designing a model where um, everybody that's been involved in the seed stage is getting rewarded for the harvest, getting a fractal share of the harvest, and the way we're thinking about structuring it is that would be equity, that the only way you can cash in your equity is based on the harvest being successful, based on
Right.
it's just like farming, that everybody gets involved in planting the seeds, and the amount you get to take as a harvest depends on how involved you've been in the process of getting to harvest, and ultimately whether anybody can exchange their equity for cash depends on those projects getting funded, and therefore having a balance that anyone can access. And so that's how we're thinking about it, and it's like that's going to be an emergent process. But let's get into like we can geek out. I love this stuff, probably too much, as I think you do too.
Well, I
It's
can't say I love it, but I know that I have to come to terms with what the ultimate decision making process is going
totally.
to be for the
And
pieces around it. So
I would just encourage like this. It's very easy to get kind of like the cart before the horse in these things. So would love to invite in Andrea and Amanda on like just how do we make sure we hit the ball at the park tomorrow and produce something that you can have as a recorded video that's going to be like, hey, we're at Sprite stage. Do you want to come and get involved for Blossom? Because ultimately, by Blossom stage, we want to be connecting the dots and like reaching out to our network, saying, "Hey, look at this success story." So tomorrow, just nailing that like 8 to 10 minute presentation. Um, probably if you aim for 8 minutes, I'd say, I think would be a good kind of, 8 minutes and then 18 minutes of, just think if that timing works.
8 minutes is great for me because when I had to present my pitch at Founders, I think we had 3 minutes to go through 10 slides. So the fact that I have more than twice the amount of time, I'll be able to go at the pace that I need to explain.
Perfect. So if we say 8 minutes, and then we'll have 18 minutes of like Q&A discussion before we move on to a SAM portal. Anyway, now just like how Amanda, like your piece, like I'd love us just to for this to be as collaborative as possible, Shane, for you to, because I think that'll really maximize the energy with which it's received. How you would like us, Amanda, Andrea, how you'd like our contribution during your presentation or in Q&A?
I think, well, Amanda and I had discussed, from like what she wants to present in terms of the things that she's focused on, and some of the performance art, and then really much more of the expanded like kind of ability to do like dig into the science research and like move into those realms of the psychology, the experiential, like all these other layers. I'll let her speak more to that. And then I know Andrea with her experience in the medical and like health insurance and like all that kind of stuff, being able to hit the three areas within this realm. I mean, granted, I wish there was an area that dealt a little bit more with like education and academia, like so how this could be produced in schools and all that kind of stuff. I wish we had somebody that could speak a little bit more to that, but that'll come in time. But I think these two particular realms, aside from the business aspect of things and how it can just be mass marketed to the majority of the masses, but how it can begin to filter into our actual healthcare system, and then from the other side of it, it being able to touch into the aspects of research and furthering the experiential combined with the performance component, so that it's not just like, oh cool, it's like, well, like what's going on in terms of like we just gonna sit around and watch you guys play bowls. It's like, no, you get to like go to full concerts and like all this stuff is happening all the while you can like be in a hospital like still experiencing it as well. So,
yeah. Well, I'd suggest that you would include at least one slide on the one-for-one model where we could talk about this being a partnership with, we could reach out to the VA, we could reach out to MAPS, we could reach out to like local school systems, we could reach out to Gavin Newsom's, like to look at like how the state could potentially be involved in this as a project.
Yeah, I can make it like a kind of like a philanthropic, JV, like here's some joint venture ideas, here's some other like areas of application of where we're thinking is like the first target markets that we would shoot for.
And what I'd say is it's kind of going to be philanthropic plus, because I would imagine that some of the proposals that you would have for Sound Helix in schools, hospitals, VA situations, like psychedelic integration, the list goes on.
Integration.
That some of those would actually be like proposals for funding at scale, where Sound Helix could go and say, okay, like we can provide bowls into these networks at this particular cost. And that could be something that we would go to funders and go and say, okay, like this is the cost for the VA experiment. This is the cost for the schools experiment. This is the cost for the hospitals experiment. This is the cost for the psychedelic integration experiment. And that gives us 4 bites at 4 different apples to fund Sound Helix to develop those programs. Cool. So I can definitely see those emerging.
I also see the inpatient, outpatient mental health component.
Yeah.
For sound healing, that's a big one that I don't know if we really talk too much about, but like before people get to per se the medical or asylum or mental asylum, it's like I get to people before they get to that point.
Yeah.
And so it's like the integration before that point or getting out of it to get back into, per se, more stabilized culture.
Totally, and I think that like we could maybe create a list of like all of the like commons societal change applications of this technology, um, such as that, such as it was mentioned yesterday around those that just discovered they got cancer, um, as like an area, like a programmatic area. Um, I think the whole way Sound for Health started was sound healing for people dying of COVID. So bringing that in, I know would make a lot of people happy. So these could be like programmatic areas. Maybe if you summarize 10 and go through like, hey, and because we've got like Mikra will be coming on the call tomorrow, I think, and she's like deep in with the VA, and like funding projects like sound research projects, like enormous budgets. And so you just might find you have a fairy godmother like on the call tomorrow that could like seed fund already before harvest stage. Who knows, right? But kind of getting those ideas just to help people see all the different applications of this.
So, Lucine, I have some thoughts and questions. So, uh, let's see. When it comes to the part that I share during the presentation, I've got 22 slides right now that basically spell out the different elements that go into the development of these immersive sound experiences that will facilitate a variety of different benefits. And I have some of the science from neuroscience and contemplative science and psychological science, just like a brief little bit about each of those and how it plays into it. I see my role here. I started a company 5 years ago that started collaborating with scientists and technologists to develop immersive sound experiences, basically. And so that like how I plug into what's being created here and what's being emergent is that I'm basically already initiating a bunch of studies around these kinds of psychoacoustic effects combined with ancient traditional containers or ceremonial containers combined with scientific frameworks. So different scientific, so all those three elements that are coming together, I think having a sort of like section of what we're doing or a entity that's like I don't know what the term is.
Holonic.
Yeah, holonically sort of connected to the co-op, that's like able to do real research and is like independent in the sense that it can be an academic institution. And then we're also going to be potentially plugged in already to an academic institution. UCSB will be delivering experiences for that community. So that would potentially be happening this summer, which would be a great like incubation period for developing what I see as an important tool for us to have, which is a demo for funders and investors. So basically, in my experience, and I've brought in hundreds of thousands of dollars into this kind of multi-sensory experience, transcendental, like therapeutic technologies industry. And people are often really just wanting an example and experience. And then when they see it, then it's much easier to bring in more, if that makes sense. So I just want to emphasize that it would be really great if we could sort of, while we're funding or building capital for the robotic arms and the Crystal Bowls company, if we saw like developing like 3 experiences. One of them could be using spatialization of sound, which I have all of this on slides if you're interested, visuals where you can kind of see these different things that need to be developed. But basically, spatialized sound is like a whole unbelievably mind opening space of sound that has, it's not really a thing yet. There's not really a lot of 3D music out there.
Have you been to Envelope yet, Lucian?
Say that again, Shane.
Have you been to Envelope?
I haven't actually. No.
But you know of it.
I do. Yeah.
Have you, Shane?
I have not, but I have a lot of friends who have been telling me about this space. So they're just like, dude, it's basically what Amanda's speaking to, like in
Yeah,
terms of the
same.
spatial.
These things are starting to pop up, but from what I understand, it's like none of them quite hit the mark yet, and I feel like
Yeah,
that's
I mean it's full ambisonic from my understanding, because like Mark is actually Mark has been a huge proponent for Envelop, because he's every time I come up to the bay, he's like, I need to take you, and I'm like yeah, no worries, you know, like, oh, we'll get to it. But I know, you know, because Amanda and I had been talking about, like, you know, especially within the ambisonic application of sound, and being able to further not only the performance aspect, but to be able to use it in a in more research and all that kind of stuff. But I'll let Amanda speak more to that, because she's more the
Yeah,
expert in
well,
that area.
3D sound is now possible in headphones. That's all you need. So, which is amazing. There's potential. There's also headphones that leave your ear open to hearing sound in the room. So you could have psychoacoustic effects administered through headphones that are generated by an app that's doing live performances with crystal bowls, and whatever performer or artist wants to add their music with that. Therapist, facilitator, sound artists, performers can all sort of bring their special talents and positive energy, and basically combine that with these live crystal bowls, playing live with just like simple technology. You don't need like a spatial sound venue necessarily to have the same effects. But anyway, this is all details. The point is, I have these multisensory technologies that are all in development right now, like at the beginning stages, and really close to just being able to like demo that with some time.
Well, so I can definitely see here a, a beautiful collaboration and prototype space between the Sound Technology Guild and the Sound Portal Guild. And that every one of the, you know, what we were discussing today, which would be really cool, because we're doing the Omniverse during Burning Man, which is going to be an 8-day festival that we bring people through, and that we'll have, like, the thing we were thinking is we would have a scavenger hunt kind of thing game, whether that what we call it, but where we could have like 8 sound portals and like 8 peaks, like places in nature where we would leave clues for people to come play, and that some of these kind of transformative or transcendent experiences could be like part of the clue. So you would go in and have that experience and go into the next. So I would say, just to the question, Amanda, is maybe like we show that there's 2 projects here, and we just have less time for Q&A. And like, if you want to take 8 minutes to present the kind of the experience design layer of the guild, and go and show that slide deck and say, look, this is where we're at, and this is how we're thinking about it, and this is what we would need to get to next steps. That could be a really good way to integrate Sound Helix and the experience design, and in particular focus on the like the application of the Sound Helix technology as like a distribution channel for these like live experiences.
Yeah, and because serendipity, whenever I met Shane, he'd started a production company named Synesthesia, and synesthetics was sort of in my field. So we were on the phone like, so how do our companies relate to each other? Does synesthesia produce synesthetics? Like, anyway, so I definitely feel like this all really resonates and makes sense, that the production company, or is that how you guys are thinking of Sound Helix?
Sound Helix, I think, is like the physical infrastructure, and like like the
I see. So the co-op, almost like a co-op structure.
yeah, and then what you're describing here with the experiences would be like an experience design layer to be distribution. It's essentially like a you know, immersive experience platform through sound, and that we can have like we you know
It's a
we
media
can,
production company.
it's
Yeah,
just
content
it's a,
creation.
yeah, in some sense, but it's like it's in home in home experiences, as well as like we could use stuff like the scavenger hunt to build more awareness for the fact that you could bring this into your home, bring these experiences, and like use kind of spectacles like Shamanka to bring that kind of experience design in. And by the way, there was some dots I wanted to connect with you, Shane, on Shamanka, where there's already a lot of energy that I've been part of for a few years to create. Do you know the myth of the vision train?
Vision Train.
Age has been it's
Is it
yeah, so basically the vision train is a kind of well mythed story that it's the kind of mythical train that we ride to the greatest party of all time. It's essentially the party to celebrate the end of time, but it's like the time as we know it, essentially. Then I sometimes joke it's the celebration train to the celebrate the end of history, which is the end of his story, which is the beginning of her story, which is our story. But 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 that's the no the idea here is that we would create we'd get one of those electric buses. They're like these completely. It's like the Tesla of buses. And I was just thinking about Shamanka as a proposal to get one of these all electric buses that would have four horns of Jericho on it. So it would have like multi-directional sound. You could go both directions, which is like the loudest speaker ever created. I think each one is like 400 grand. And Red Lightning has got some of them. And I gave the 2030 Sunrise talk at the 2030 Sunrise in Burning Man on the Friday morning this last year, and they are so loud and so clean sound that everyone in the temple, it was like sunrise, everyone in the temple heard the whole word for word 2030 talk like
Yeah.
that I was giving.
Yeah, the Danley sound system from a lot of the tech engineers, the audio engineers that I spoke to. I'll have to send you my pitch deck for Shamanka because I sent it to Andrea last night. It's not all the way done, but it's about like 80% done. It's the last pieces that actually need to be completed is actually getting the whole list of the cost of all of the actual hardware that we would have to build into it.
Well,
But anyways, go on.
that basically is a brilliant collaboration between Sound Technology and Sound Portal Guild, and I think you'd have a number of support. And there's already a team in place that have been visualizing this peace train, which would move around the country, and it would basically have it would this electric bus would pull shipping containers that would get converted into like train carriages,
Hmm.
and it would be an electric train essentially. And so Shamanka could actually be the train, and like what we could then do is have like that bus be able to pull these containers, and then you be able to get like there's a whole load of people already like wanting to see that as like the greatest art car ever created. And so if we could somehow think of ways that Shamanka and the train could be combined, I think there would be like a lot of support there. Amanda Sage is a big advocate for this, so
Yeah,
we
I
can
mean
think
the
about that.
what we had discussed about Shamanka at the time when I was designing it was that it was going to basically be on like an 18-foot or on an 18-wheeler flatbed. So then that
Yeah,
way, instead of integrating it fully into a bus or like any other type of device or other type of vehicle, because if the vehicle breaks down, then you're fucked. So if it being on the trailer
yeah.
bed, you can, it's interchangeable. So you only have to kind of keep swapping
You can
out
put, yeah.
the transportation.
Well, have a thought, because I had a sense and a vision that we could get this electric bus completely sponsored, that we could get given it as a bus. Because if I was that electric bus company, if I was like the Tesla of buses and
Mhm.
got told that, hey, here's a proposal to turn this bus into the most legendary sound art car ever created, like that would be, and it's like it's incredible technology. It's so like from the future.
Yeah,
These,
I mean
these like so
the biggest operational challenges that I saw within doing the flatbed was one, if fuck all if the playa would actually let us bring it on to um into D playa because it's so big. Two, the Danley sound system requires a heap load of energy to
Yeah.
run it.
Well, that's one of the rigs I had been like I a little bit geek out on like these things that many of us do, but I was thinking that we might be able to like rig the batteries from the bus up to the sound system, and so the
I think
bus,
it'll be too. I think it'll be too hard.
yeah,
And the only reason why I speak of it in that way because I spoke to the engineers about this because one of the one of the guys who I spoke to on Anton is the one who was running sound at Playa Alchemist. And when I was talking to Anton about it, about the whole art car, he was like, I want in on this, like, because I've always wanted to design a system that is like to the spec that I want it to be. And if it's going to be for sound healing, then I'm totally into that. And I was like, okay, cool. So, you know, when we were kind of throwing around ideas, I was like, well, when it comes to power consumption, what is like, you know, what are we looking at here? And he was like, you're going to need at least 4 breakers, you know, 15 to 20 amps each, you know, and you're going to be looking at,
yeah. Let's
there's a lot of technical
like
aspects.
yeah, let's this is super fun,
Yeah.
and there's like a lot of great engineers that would be well up for supporting this project.
Yeah.
But let's pause on that and like potentially bring it into Sound Portal as a kind of the jewel of the crown project. And I have a hunch that it would be great to combine Shamanka and the train.
Yeah.
Because there will be a lot of energy that way and potential funding, etc.
Yeah. I mean, and I love the the pulling the containers and, you know, because now they're making those containers that are like self-assembly where you
Yeah.
literally like roll them out, you press a button and they all like, you know, trick out like fucking transformers and they turn into
Yeah.
spaces. So I was like, dude, if we like trick one out that was kind of like a Burning Man style, you know,
Yeah. Go back to you, Amanda. Those train carriages, like Amanda has already got this like it's called the non-stop vision train. She's already got like I don't know, like 50, 100 visionary artists
nice.
that would like commit to like transforming each one of those train carriages into a story of our own transformation of society.
Yep.
So imagine if we could
Love
literally be driving electric train across the country.
Love it.
So,
Love it.
Amanda, I'm conscious of like I would love for you to feel like in terms of the Technology Guild that just to make sure that you're comfortable to present what you feel it would be most appropriate to present with a max of 8 minutes.
Yeah, totally. That sounds great. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited for how all this is.
Anything you want to add before we move across to the Alliance?
I trust you guys so much. Yeah.
We're crushing so hard on you all the time. Like, we'll talk about it.
You guys, I was thinking about you before I fell asleep last night.
You think about us when you went to sleep?
Yeah, it was like a way of like, you know, drifting into the dream world and also like feeling a lot of happy, positive, just peaceful feelings. Yeah.
Don't let Jonathan know.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Jonathan would understand.
Jonathan would understand to some degree, Amanda.
Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, that's awesome that we've got 2 presentations, and maybe you and Shane could sync just so that the presentations feel like as maximally synced as possible.
Yeah.
And Amanda, again, anyone else that you want to add, that would be awesome as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll bring along EO. If we could send him a welcome letter, I don't know if there's something we can drum up, but he's
yeah, let me try, and Brian, I love your help with that. Let me try and do like an email that people can forward to folks to invite in. That's a great idea. So we'll send it to the 22 people and then do it in such a way that they can forward and invite people into the conversation.
Before we do just transition, I just want to add this one. I just want to ask this one last piece, especially for the slide presentations. You know, because my brain has been so immersed in startup company stuff over the years, you know, my pitch deck obviously follows the traditional, like, okay, you know, here's here's the pitch, here's the problem, here's the solution, and then and follows that whole structure. Do I need to kind of follow that similar structure, or no? Like,
Well,
yes,
8 minutes. I like that structure because
yeah, and that's fine.
it shows the legitimacy of like the depth of thought that you've done. Like I think the thing that you want to get across is that this isn't an idea you just had in the shower this morning, but it's
Right,
like
right.
something you've done deep thought in.
Yeah, and I
think
mean,
yeah.
the one area of it is the pitch deck was originally portrayed of addressing the mental health industry and the way that our healthcare system is failing a lot of people within mental health. So kind of trying to encapsulate what the problem here is of what I'm, what myself is presenting, what Amanda's presenting, and all of that stuff is going to be a little bit more kind of overarching. So that's why I was curious if I need to kind of shift the focus of the problem so that the solution is a little bit more broad. So that's why I was just curious.
Yeah.
So that might take me a little bit.
I think whatever you feel, it's your time, and it's like really it's what you're inviting in to go from sprout to blossom.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I can still pitch it from the perspective of mental health because ultimately that is in a certain aspect of what we are shooting for, is to create better health amongst like I mean,
I think that's a great angle.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, for sure.
So, welcome, Danielle. Thank you for being here. Andrea, thank you so much again. Thank you for being here. I'm sorry. I just saw your note about Tesla trucks. That I think that would be. Do you mean the like new? Because they've got actually Tesla, like they've got the big ones that.
Well, it's like the Tesla rigs that are like going to be going around the country, and it's being used by different trucking companies to kind of move everything out. And I have a lot of friends in logistics for trucks. And so they say when that comes out, so I was just wondering, like, oh, you have a Tesla truck, or talking about like water fusion generators. Like there's a couple things around those places, but I don't know if
Well,
that's
I'll have a Tesla truck when they're available.
yeah.
not the one that like looks like the gray whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know what that is, but this is like the one that looks like a real rig.
I think we need to dig through a little bit of our Burning Man contacts and find out who knows Elon.
Well, funnily enough, randomly, I watched The Man Burn with Elon last year. And I like came out, I was seeing a group of friends and I was like, oh, look, and ended up, it was kind of like one of those surreal serendipitous things. And Kimball Musk is a big funder of like what's going on in the food space. And so like, I think like there is no one on this planet that the unified planet can't access. Literally no one. So it's like, let's like identify what is the ask, and like I think Elon, like a Tesla truck to become like Shamanka, like that kind of thing. We can aim. We don't have to pay for shit. We can we can create a model where we're like saying, hey, here's the proposal. This is going to be the greatest archive ever created, and it's going to be a train that will move across the country, and it will it's et cetera, et cetera. Like that presentation we could definitely get to Elon, and that could be a really cool way of doing it. But
he's got a lot of free time right now with a lot of the warehouses not really operating, so
He's operating.
he's trying to get them operating.
Elon's been going to Burning Man for like a decade as well, so he's probably a good person to like present that idea to.
Yeah.
So,
totally.
I met him once and said, I asked him, I was like, what, I've always wondered what would happen if Tesla and SpaceX had a baby. Are you thinking about electric airplanes? And he kind of laughed, and it was a week before the Hyperloop came out. And he was like, no, we're actually thinking about something more underground than that. And I was like, I didn't get the joke at the time. Like I was like, underground, thinking it was like this secret project. I was like, oh, right, got it. It was like a really good one. But cool. Thanks, Shane. Thank you so much, Amanda. Andrea, thank you so much for that one. And now Andrea, over to you for the Alliance. You're
Unmuted.
muted. There you go.
Yeah, I know. I keep on muting myself. So I filled in the document for the Sound Alliance, and I'm going to put this in. Let me see. Into the main format, or Lucian might be closer to it. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I'll pull it up.
Yeah. So the document, and this was just going into Sound Alliance, everything that we've kind of spoken about before this time, is it's a collaboration between current programs, institutes of sound that we see, but also bringing into the health component that we've all been speaking of. That's kind of an overarching between the portals and the technology. One of the projects is the sound awareness matrices. And the last time that we spoke was getting more into knowing the right type of languaging for sound healers. I know that we don't want to be called, or it's not to be called that, but I'm just wondering from the standpoint, what is, Danielle, Amanda, it's the facilitators was the main one that came up as the main, other than therapists and artists. So if going into the marketplace, what's kind of the one out of the three, knowing that all are available? And Joshua, everyone that.
I also go back and forth between saying facilitator or practitioner.
Okay.
But for me, it really depends on the environment that I'm going into. Because the language in that environment makes what I do more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I think, where I still get stuck in like trying to choose one.
Mm-hmm. So
I like Alchemist. That's what I usually use.
Okay.
So I wonder if there's a way to do it where it's like you kind of get, it doesn't have to be just one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a way to frame it where it's like, so, to Danielle's point, like depending on the atmosphere, it's one or the other. What do y'all think of that?
Amanda?
It just depends on if this is for like written language, like written to describe, like, for example, the Unified Planet has a organization within it that's a co-op that is made up of like a variety or a group of sound facilitators who, like, to me, that, because practitioner, I'd assume the person would have some kind of certification, or that they've been practicing in a more like
Clinical?
clinical environment, and that's wonderful. And we have a lot of practitioners, so you could say with sound facilitators that include sound artists, sound and sound practitioners. That would be like the most definitive, I think, so far. Saying sound facilitators, and also including sound practitioners, therapists, and artists. That seems to cover it all.
I like that.
So it's having alchemist, artist, therapist,
Practitioner.
practitioner.
Well, my only concern about Alchemist is that it will turn away. I'm always hearing the feedback of the academic community living with the scientists, and it's just like sometimes it breaks down my spirit, because they're so picky. But the alchemy will be a trigger word for woo-woo, like super hardcore. They'll just be like, that doesn't mean anything. And now I'm not sure if I trust what's going to happen, because it's like they're just making up words. So that's my only concern about it. But yes, it is true. You could use alchemy as a way to describe what's being done, so that it's explained. If there's a way to define the term, if you use it to some degree, then it'll reach, I think, would be sort of more.
So like the definitions for what the therapist, the alchemist, the practitioner, the artist, within the field of spaces that they actually create and what they actually serve.
Right. You could say some people in the group go by or sort of identify with being sound alchemists, which is, you know, kind of combining different elements of vibration in order
Yeah.
to create a holistic, synergetic experience.
Yeah.
And so that would like define alchemy more for people who don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, because I love alchemy, but I also know logically I'm from the Midwest. Most people are like, I don't want to go there to that.
And let's think, yeah, maybe then we
Too
remove
spiritual.
that.
I'm like, no, it isn't.
Yeah.
But I think there's a
Yeah,
way we
like
can
alchemy,
kinda
are you like
scientifically
witches?
introduce new words, you know?
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that, Jane?
Oh, I was thinking that some people might associate alchemy to like wizardry or witches or, you know, something from the occult or, you know, like, you know, however which way you want to spin it, you know, especially amongst more of the religious folk. So
But yeah,
Yeah,
I
I-
want our self-expression is really important too, and I want everyone to feel like they get to be, you know, in their true,
Mhm.
in their true cloaks, or not cloaks, but embodiment.
And I think it's top line tag lines and titles that people will look at first. So leading with practitioners and therapists and stuff like that is a key, I think. Because ultimately we need that scientific community to buy in for a lot of what
We
we
need the
want to
medical
do.
community to like look
Mhm.
at it because that's the biggest component.
Get guided in and feel safe. Like call it whatever you want. Like I just want people to like have an understanding.
Okay.
So I say we make it multiple and we lead with the safer words.
So witch is out.
Which is
I think
a warlock.
Warlock is out.
Sound
I can wear my
facilitators.
tall hat and like have a cape.
Yeah.
Go over great.
Yeah, I think sound facilitators, including sound practitioners, therapists, and artists, with like those four, you know, could be just really solid to hold on to and keep track of.
That feels really good.
I think we should coin sound wizardry. Enough people are familiar with Harry Potter. So
Yes.
I like that sound
Whoa,
wizardry.
it, like whoa, like, you know, is that like some other division of like Harry Potter land? You know, so
We could have the
I
Woo
think
Art Collective, you know, the Woo
sound
Art
wizardry.
School.
See you for 5 minutes.
Woomancy or something like that. Woomancy.
Mm.
Which is another version. Okay, so in the sound matrix, 5 of the areas that we'll be speaking about in order to get it out to, you know, the planetary commons is the physical, physiological, the mental, cognitive side, the environmental, spatial, and social side. Those all go together. And then the emotional, psychological, and then the spiritual and the reverence. So some of the kind of taglines for physical is like, we use the word heal and it means restore to sound health. And then how sound is changing the game. You know, more or less how sound opens up your heart. Woo to true. Sound is the feedback loop and it cuts through the noise and that we're on the same wavelength.
Mm.
And then the dissonance to resonance, because I think in a lot of ways when we're looking at the human body, we're saying that a lot of the disease states are dis-ease or inner conflicts within the body. So any type of sound is bringing back into resonance what has been in dissonance for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And so that I know within medical communities, they look at resonance and dissonance within cell health and from a biological, molecular biology state. And so from like COVID, because it's working a lot with the pericardium and lung, like having any type of sound healing or sound practitioners is actually opening up the heart meridian and the heart space, which then balances with the lung meridian.
I'm Andrea. I think this is such a strong start, and I think this is something that's going to resonate with everyone to be part of like joining this alliance and kind of contributing their piece to it. And I think we could invite people to be everyone that's been through the game so far to be kind of founding members of the alliance.
Yeah. Well, it's like if I was looking, David Gibson, his PDF of everything that he's put together on his side, knowing that Sound Alliance is like an enhancement of like all these other collaborations. And it's like, how do we make things better? And what Danielle's created, Amanda, Shane, and everyone else, it's like, this is a collaborative game. And when I was looking at the matrices, I looked at it as a 5-pointed star. So it's like you're already giving stars within the game, and it's like we're creating stars out in the masses in the community for people to feel more enlightened for themselves.
If there's any way there's a sixth point, that's going to be the symbol for
Merkaba, okay. Okay, we can. I can see if I can move it out to 6.
because that would just be epic.
We're
That's it.
creating a Merkaba. All right, that's
Yeah.
good.
That's in. I'm actually hoping that's going to be the symbol for the unified planet.
Okay. Yeah, I can throw in a 6 with that. The other thing that's come out of this, because it's a lot dealing with vibrational sound, spatial sound, healthcare healing, performance healing, which, you know, anytime you go to a concert, you're getting some type of healing while you're there. And Lucinda can speak, and Amanda can speak from that, from their side. Let me see. And then one of the other aspects was the double bouncing memes, which was coming up with sound heals, sound transforms, sound, like it's like this back and forth of like the sound does this and it bounces back, kind of like a tennis court, or it keeps on going. It's like sound enlightens, sound transforms, sound transcends, sound heals, sound strengthens. So there's all these aspects of just 2 words being put together that people are like, oh, how does it transform? It's going to ask more questions within their field.
I
Be
love
like, oh, how does it transform? And then they could go down and see, okay, there's more to that.
Exactly. Like maybe we could design something from a meme perspective that would look like a sonar. Like
Well, it's like an echolocation. We're doing an echolocation within the field of the planet in order to get people to be more in resonance.
Love
like
it.
that.
Love it. Amanda.
Oh, actually, this is tiny detail, but it just hit me. Every time I hear sound transcends, it makes me think of sound sort of overcoming something. But I think maybe a more like
Maybe another one right there.
maybe a
Sound
better way of saying
overcome.
is sound transports, because sound kind of transports our consciousness to like a more expanded perception of reality. And I think that's what we're talking about when we say transcends. It's like awareness of multidimensional reality or sort of transpersonal experience of some kind. So and that was just a small detail, but
It's like a transcendence, it's like you want to be transported to a different place when you're in a bad place for healing. Or when you want to heal, you're like, I have cancer. I want to get to the next step.
so like transmutes would be good for that. Sound
Yeah.
transports, which is something different than, you know, sound transmutes.
I think all of them apply. I mean, anything that you put with sound is going to amplify. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that sound is an amplifier. If we're using it with good energy, it can be amplified. But then we're looking at sound can actually become noise if it's in the wrong frequency for the wrong part of the body. And I know David has a lot of studies based on frequencies and based on organs, which I want to have more conversations or bring him in, because I know he has a lot of stuff.
I can also help you. Sorry, I'm jumping in.
Yeah.
Sorry. I can also help you, informing you a little bit about the difference between sound, you know, what, you know, just highlighting those facts. You know, I'm informed on that too.
Okay.
Just to let you know.
Yeah. Any, like, again, collaboration, any feedback, like, how do we make this better? How do we amplify this so it goes out into the world and the space and more people?
I would love to be, part of that. Because I feel like it's things in addition to frequency. But basically about how to help people connect to that more quantum state that's inside of themselves versus just the 3D mapping, how to use sound. So.
And I think in the presentation tomorrow, Andrea, if you can give an example of like maybe one of these, what it would visually look like, to say, like, for example, sound amplifiers, or whichever one you might want to choose.
I think there's a couple there's like cymatics, but there's one that's like a heat signature, where like how sound hits the body, and then there's heat signatures that change within the body. But I'm not sure exactly where that's at. I want to see where that's at, because I've seen it once, but I was in Europe when I saw it.
Interesting.
Awesome. So that kind of thing, if we think almost as like the Alliance being that we kind of joked about it seriously, but the kind of propaganda for sound,
Mhm.
and how we can use like really great visuals to.
Yeah, and I'm not a graphics artist. Like I'm more of a writer, synthesizer. So I know that a lot of other people are much better at graphics, putting things
I
together.
think it's more like seeding the invitation. That's the perfect example of something we can invite in for the Blossom stage. Is say like what we would love to do is find someone that could be a graphic illustrator
Yeah.
to come up with these.
Well, it's like almost like little,
brand campaign.
yeah, because
Sound
it's
bites sort of
well, it's
thing.
like the sound bites. It's like you're having like these little appetizers, and then you want to come back for the next course. You want to come back for the dinner. You want to come back for the buffet. You
Yeah.
want to go around the world with these sound bites.
And if we can design them almost as like memes, we could display all of these like sound bites, sound memes. We could display them all around all the portals.
Mm-hmm.
So we could even put them like we could get stickers printed on the side of the trailer, and have like
Well, it's also education. Like the thing about the sound bites or anything that we're putting out to the community is we want them to become educated and empowered at the same time is
Yeah.
getting this information and not
One
brought
of the
back like how Corona is back to like contraption.
One of the things that I just added to the document for Sound Portals is the brand values, which are, I don't know whether they are to do with the Alliance, but they are to do with education, which is basically information, informing people, empowering people, defining play, experience. Actually, it was like listen, experience, play, and define used. But I think really it's more maybe inform than define. I think that's so integral to what we're doing, to everything that we do, because without that, it could just be an art installation with sound. So by adding the information, informing people, we're always pushing that agenda.
It's like we're creating an outdoor museum, I think, where it's like you're going into these acoustic spaces, you're being informed of what the painting is or what the installation or what the instrument that's being used. And then you're able to come out of the space more grounded, more informed, more embodied, like with how things are collaborated. So there's just so many different ways to go about this that it's quite fascinating.
Collaborated, is that a new word?
Collaborated? Collaborate.
Oh, you said collaborated.
By the way,
another one.
A word that we use a lot in our conversation, which I think has so much resonance to it, is such a powerful word, is echo. Because echo really is what we're doing. We want to echo what we're doing into the world. And have it, I like that. I like Project Echo. I like that just as a word, as a title.
Project Echo.
Project Echo.
That sounds dope.
So that is Project Echo. We could actually build some. We could build into every game where the notion of what it is to double bounce a meme. And what I mean by double, I'd spoken about this when we were at seed stage. But if you imagine a global network of people that are like recognize the need for collective storytelling, when something has been tested as having like mimetic resonance, something that like we know can get like it's got the potential to get shared widely, that we have Project Echo, which is actually a project of Unified Planet, where when food comes up with something that needs to get echoed, when community comes up with something that needs to get echoed, that we have a distribution model of everyone that's playing the game just to go press echo, and it goes, and that's one of the ways the game can scale. Is like, I love it as a notion.
The funny thing is I used to be a zookeeper, and the first animals I ever took care of and did behavioral studies on were bats.
Whoa.
So I know a lot about animals and echolocation and monkeys and elephants because of sound.
That's really badass.
I was like 8 years old. This was like very different. You're cleaning bat guano while you're doing it. So that's the other side of the whole exposure.
Andrea, can you just say like one thing that stands out in the...
I worked in a jungle for an entire year. Like Omaha, where I'm from, is like one of the number one, number two zoos in the world between that and San Diego. And it's a research
Wow.
one, birth cheetahs and lions and all the other stuff. But we create a desert dome, jungles, like everything that you see in Africa or Asia, we've created here. So it's beautiful because it's like when a person feels really down and they don't connect to the humans, they go into the zoo. So you'd see a lot of people that were going in from a PTSD depressed state, and they'd come out like they were little children. So it's a transformation space more than anything.
Absolutely. Wow. And what I love about that, it's been mentioned here about sound pollution, but we haven't talked about is how in what we're doing to our environment and the species and the animals is that we don't hear. We're more separate from being in communion and sound with the elements, with nature and animals. And I feel like, at least during this time for sabbatical in place, I feel like it's so much more coming alive.
Mhm.
And
We became the animals.
What do you say?
We became the animals.
Yeah.
We became the ones that actually are inside in the cages. And the animals are still the ones that are outside playing.
Wow. Yes.
That's a huge component. I mean, we're in Zooms that literally look like boxes.
Wow.
What a great narrative for us to
That's really cool.
shine a light on.
And I think it's for little kids too, because they like
I love
like
that.
the animals. So it's like the sound components with that, like the memes, the graphics, or any of those. Like that's, I don't know. I just have a lot of ideas with that based on backgrounds.
I think there's the one thing that came through strongly in the seed stage was this whole notion of sound pollution, and that people have that it might actually have like intention behind it. Like for example, we mentioned yesterday in War Zones playing Metallica, but like in terms of like the use of commercial music as like this disharmony. And dissonance. This could be something like that we bring in to the Alliance as a way of like informing people around. We called it in the seed stage. It was like sound hygiene, and then it went from sound hygiene to sound. It went in a different way. It went in a different.
Body, I think.
Sorry.
Sound body?
It wasn't Sound Body, that was a different one. It was Sound it was the one that Mel was in, Sound
Harmony?
Sorry?
Transform?
Sound Harmony.
Harmony.
Sound Harmony. We went from hygiene to harmony.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks for that. And that could be, like a project of Project Echo could be, like echoing the positivity of sound, like of the transformational capacity of sound, and this being an education program, education awareness, like public awareness, because that's something that you can raise good money for.
Yeah, and the other thing is that if you think about Corona, they blamed bats as the start of it, of why we even had it in the first place. And it's really because of the way that we treat our environment, put the bats into a stressful state. So then they're actually picking up things that they usually would not be picking up because it's a big circle of life.
This is
Fascinating.
This is like when you see the myth being written in front of you. You know what I mean? I'm having one of those moments where I'm like, oh, this is just like, this story is just, rule number 2, let's write a better story. And it's like, well, just so happens that the story is being written for us. I grew up with bats. I had like bats lived in my wall at my house, and so I had like special bonding with bats. Yeah. But this is awesome, and actually maybe what we could do is a whole meme around Batman. And like putting out the bat signal.
That's what we're doing, literally. Like we're just throwing this out into the field and being like, who's going to see this, who's going to hear this, and
Exactly.
have this going forward. And it's like, who hears the call, who hears what's happening in the field, and just like bring all the people together.
We could do a whole meme around Gotham and be like, hey, you know, Gotham, like, like, do you hear the call, and do a bat signal, and then like have a whole meme around that. Could be a really way of like echoing, like using storytelling and like you know, the sort of the kind of archetypal resonance that comes with comic books. You know, I could definitely see the campaign here actually being we could have a sound comic book. Have like a sound woman or a sound man or something like that as a comic character. Sonic. Yeah, exactly.
I have it as Sonic the Hedgehog, and I do little comic book stuff already for my writings, but it's in like different spaces of like healthcare.
Well,
kind of
Project Echo could actually be a comic called Sonic. And that could be a really cool project to say, like, the Sound Alliance is gonna produce a you know, comic, and like you know, that be a thematic meme that could bring across to visuals that would be brought into the sound portals as well.
And then also instruments that could be played within the comic book, because it could be online and they can go to it, and it has different frequencies or sounds that are kind of codified to open up.
Yeah.
Like just the quantum level of things, but I don't know. I can geek out for this for a long time.
Yeah, I love the comic book aspect. Because if you imagine, if we're taking like 26 topics each year through the game, and you know, there's a food alliance being formed. Imagine if the comic book meme machine could be something that was introduced by sound through Project Echo, and that is then replicated so that each alliance creates its own character, like in a comic book. We, you know, after a year with 26 different characters,
Have an entire league after
we could like do a whole like thing where people are invited to come into immersive experiences representing an archetypal comic character, of like, you know, this is Sonic, this is like whatever title food has. And like, that's where you actually can start like comic. A dear friend of mine started a comic book called The 99, which is super successful. It's really interesting to look at, where he basically has leaders of different religions, and it's a comic book all about the world's religions. It's been really successful. Obama gave like some award to him, and he ended up getting death threats because of what he was doing around like.
Wow. What's the name of it?
99.
What is it?
The 99. I'll put a link in here.
Another version.
I think coming up with a sound hero would be amazing. Imagine coming up with
Sound hero.
a sound hero.
Yeah.
A sound hero in a comic book thing. I love that idea of doing like a comic sound hero.
Yeah.
Or the Sound Hero series.
Yes.
Maybe
Sonic.
the Sound Hero series.
That's nice.
It would be
That's
cool
nice.
too if the character was androgynous, and actually part of its superpower is to turn into masculine and feminine characters as like fractal projections of itself, and then like as you gamify it, if it's like an online boarding game, like you have to embody different aspects of feminine and masculine energy to solve puzzles, and then you have to like also understand certain resonant frequencies to be able to actually you know, attract or repel certain things that are then distinguishable between masculine and feminine energy. So
Yeah.
that'd be a cool way.
Andrea, I'm going to send you an image of the Macabre, and if we could create
that'd be great.
androgynous like Sonic, the sound superhero, with the Macabre on because the Macabre, ultimately the Chariot of Light, is a sound device, sound and light device. You know, the
Merkaba. Yeah, I have a necklace that's a Merkaba that spins.
So there's so many like archetypal stories coming in here. So that would be that would be get people really excited to say like, hey, the Alliance, one of the projects of Project Echo is Sonic, the sound superhero that will be like creating memes and distributing memes and having taglines that kids can follow. And like, why aren't we creating a more epic comic book series right now?
As appropriate as the name Sonic is, I'm afraid we'd get into trouble.
With Sonic the Hedgehog.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
Well, with the hedgehog, I actually think it's helpful to get into trouble in certain things.
Yes.
I'm all for being like, who are they going to sue?
We could count on it then.
What money are they going to get? What's better? What money are they going to get?
Exactly. What?
Echo. Echo.
Echo. Yeah, Echo's a good name. Echo is
Maybe
a good name.
Echo or Sonica?
So Echo
If
is
we could come up with a version where Echo is part of the name, like create our own word, but Echo is part of it.
you know,
You follow?
Yeah.
so that would be, so Echo could be another character, Sonic and Echo, and we could have another one. Just would be little moment here. The first company I ever created was called it was actually Brave New Enterprises, and New standard for Narcissus Echo Worldwide, and it was the myth of Narcissus and Echo, which is where we get the daffodil
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
And the Narcissus was like so in love being the archetype of the human, so in love with his own image and himself, that he couldn't hear the voice of Echo, the daughter, the nymph that was the daughter of Zeus, that was like in love with Narcissus, and was calling Narcissus' name repeatedly. And this, what the myth is that could be beautifully portrayed in a comic book here, is that we got so lost in falling in love and drunk with our own individualism that we forgot how to listen to nature, i.e. Echo, the daughter, how we get to eat. Like, and so like this notion of like using comic books as a way of like archetypal remembrance and bringing in the ancient future of like, you know, the myth of Narcissus and Echo.
Well, it's all the different cultures and all their myths. I mean, you could go into India, Asia, like Greece, Rome. I mean, there's so many different resonant, ancient, and then the musical instruments that are being utilized in those fields.
Yeah, we could.
Another character could be Siren.
Siren, yeah.
We'll have to look at Marvel on that one. I know a lot of comic book
If we're
characters.
going to do it, we may as well just, go all the way.
Yeah.
We need to come up with a bad character now. The nemesis.
Maybe Narcissus is the, like, if we're saying
Narcissinia.
Yeah, or like if the the kind of the overarching position, like we're in a kind of David Goliath moment with the system, in that the unified planet is like the resistance, and the Death Star is unbridled free market capitalism, where we've been conquered by capital and we've like put capital before community. And like the whole notion of like Sonic and Echo and like the superheroes of sound, they are like fighting for justice to return the prioritization of capital to its kind of capital is in service to community rather than the other way around. There's a whole narrative that we could develop that's like so great for the Alliance. And it's exactly kind of like what happens when a game births an alliance. Comic book. It's like, and that's actually like way more effective to reach a lot of people around the message of sound and as a power of as a tool for transformation.
Okay, it could be the Dark Siren.
I didn't hear what you said. What'd you say?
The Dark Siren. I'm just, I'm stuck on names.
I like it.
So sorry if this is going to come out in a cohesive, I don't know, theme, but what keeps coming to me is, especially when you're when we were talking about bats is that I don't know where to start with this. I don't know if you guys have heard the Dr. Zach Bush. I think that's his name. He has like 3 MD degrees. Have you heard him? Lucen, you're nodding your head, yes. So what I love, and then also I've been doing a lot of studying and work about the spiritual alchemy process, and then listening to a lot of Gaia. But basically, it all keeps leading into the same themes. And I'll just give one example of listening to Gaia. It was this woman who was channeling one of the Pleiadians guides. And she was, and this was recorded like years ago, like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. And she was talking about the Pleiadians' journey from when they were going through the 3rd dimension into the 4th dimension, which is what I believe that this whole process is about. And so the interviewer asked the person who was channeling the Pleiadians, well, what happened to the Pleiadians when they were going through that transformation? And they said, and she said that they almost didn't make it as the species, as the Pleiadians, because they had to deal with the virus. And so and the virus was about, and so this is what Zach Bush talks about, that there is a virus, but the way that the virus gets activated is through, in relationship to all these different things that are in our environment that we're contaminating. And that's what the Pleiadians were talking about, is that, and that's part of the alchemy process, and especially when they make the analogy to the process of the metamorphosis of the butterfly, where I think it's called the calcination process, where you have to, like, you develop like a virus where you start to, it's like be able to transmute all of that negative aspects of ourselves, and to be able to ascend to a higher realm. And so anyway, so I was thinking about a bat is kind of similar to a butterfly, but basically about how to incorporate, this is one of my ideas, how to incorporate, I believe that it was such a gift. I don't think it's coincidental or it's all synchronistic of why this whole thing is the virus. Anyway, so long way of saying, I don't know if we can incorporate that part into the storyline about, versus about seeing the virus as like this negative thing and we're against it and so separate, like it's part of the whole process. Yeah. And kind of what you were saying about the bat, that it's not just, oh, the bat gave us this whole pandemic, but was that whole interchange. So it was a long way of saying a lot of different things.
And also with wings, like it has the word win in it. If you think about wings.
Yes.
It's like we're trying to create a win-win economy, win-win everything.
Yes.
Yeah. Have wings or given wings or whatever. It's like elevation and octaves that we're always playing.
Yes.
I think one of the key messages to Project Echo, Sonic the comic, one of the key messages would be to like return people's faith in nature's intelligence and the kind of the imaginal selves moment that we're in this time. And so it could be a narrative, like a parallel narrative for what people are actually going through. And like those storylines will have, like, when we can create the hero's journey through a comic, and we can like create myth through the experience and create ritual that others then can participate in, that the more we can tell the story of the collective journey as it currently is right now, and invite others to like write new episodes of the comic, and people actually live the comic book through these immersive sound experiences, through sound portals and things like that, that like what the game is creating is it's like a way of having like, you know, location based immersive experiences that can bring people into a new story, a new way of relating to the collective journey that we're on.
You know the Player One Ready movie?
Yeah.
Very well. Like there's a component of that where it's like the virtual AR space, but it's like you're in reality, but you're also in the game and you're also in all this. So there's like so many different hold-ons that
Yes.
created from it, and just kind of like the bigger picture of everything. So I'm loving all the conversation and input and collaboration. It's awesome.
So Andrew, in the last 12 minutes of the Alliance conversation, how can we kind of put a bow on this for the presentation tomorrow? Because there's a lot of exciting things. Like I hope this has been helpful rather than like throwing more ideas into the synthesis.
I think if I'm asking like from the collective is like, when you think of sound, like a word that goes with it, that's the verb, which are the words that you see or that you feel would be the most resonant given your experience going out into the marketplace?
Frequency, vibration, sound, resonance.
Like
Can
sound,
you just clarify the
sound in a
question just a
word.
little bit more?
So it's like sound and then it's the verb. So I can give you like a couple different, let's see. Sorry, there's so many documents.
It's like resonance, sound resonance.
Transformation.
It's like sound transforms, like anything that has an S on the end of it. So it's like sound heals, sound transforms, sound resonates, sound transfixes, sound, trying to think, gosh.
Transcends.
Let's see. I had this all written down, but I'm trying to find it.
It still sounds to me like when I hear transcends, it still sounds to me like it's saying that sound overcomes or sort of goes beyond something. It doesn't quite say sound transports or sound transmutes, like when I imagine transcendental experience does.
Yeah.
But those are tiny things. But I like transcendental as something to point to. But I think maybe a term that helps you imagine or put yourself in the user experience.
Like there's examples of like sound moves, sound shifts, sound enhances, sound manifests, sound inspires,
Expands,
Transforms.
transforms. Definitely, I feel like that's the key.
My favorite is shift happens.
I wonder why. And also like sound unites, because that's what happens in music, is that people come in from all over the world together to a festival or Burning Man.
Yes.
And then there's a unification that happens based on the resonance that we have.
It also communicates the student with all of the research from HeartMath and feeling the interconnectedness of sound through the electromagnetic field.
Honestly, what would be amazing is if we had underneath each of these an article that's connected to like an actual study or some kind of, that would be so powerful to read. Sound connects or sound communicates, and you just have like the examples from like.
That's part of what this is to have the link to where it's going. So
Nice.
you have this, and then it's like it's going to go to where it needs to be.
Cool.
So, but I'm still looking for some studies on this, because some of the studies are like, I have so many studies to pull from, and I know you probably do.
I have a great resource that covers a lot of these different ones.
Okay, that would be great. I'd love to see that.
Creates. Sound creates.
I like that.
I think something interesting here around sound and time. I was just going through some let's just synthesize them as toad notes, wink wink, and one of the experiences there that anyone that's been through that I think shares is the universal light and the universal sound.
Yeah.
And so like in the beginning,
The Lux and the Logos.
in the beginning was the, on that universal sound, and like getting to that point of like we made an agreement to fracture, and in doing so, like if you think about the sound wave, it's the original fracture is going from that like pure, like it's essentially the birth of duality.
Yes.
And this is like really great that we're coming back to it, because the original intention of starting with sound was like in the beginning was the word, and like anyone that's had these transcendent experiences will never forget the sound that is there, that it is you and you are it, and there is no you and there is no it. So like getting something here is like the timelessness nature of sound and the wave, is like it is a fractal for all reality, and it is like the sound wave is an expression of duality itself. So it's like there's something interesting in this, and particularly with the macabre being the symbolic representation of that as well.
Listen, I love that. It's the word that kept coming to me was sound silence, but and I'm not saying that was good, but I kept seeing it's like that duality, but that duality is one and the same, because we hear sound in that wave. We only hear sound because of silence. And what you were saying, it's that sound to me, because I always think of vibration as the first form of the divine, of pure light. But so when you were talking, I loved it. What I kept seeing, it's like sound timelessness, sound beginnings. I think that that's like epic.
Maybe like sound beyond time.
Sound beginning. What do you say? Sound timelessness.
Beyond time.
Permeates is another word, and integrates and synergizes are three words that come up around what you just shared.
Sound synergy.
Enlivens.
Yeah. It's like like we talk a lot, because we do these 2030 gatherings, and we talk a lot about spelling the future. In speaking how the world is, we're literally spelling it. And it's called hyperstition. When a group of people start to share a worldview, they create the feedback loops to accelerate towards that. And it all begins with spelling the future. And so that kind of notion of like the Hebrew tradition, for example, a name, I'm not just the Hebrew tradition, but the name of something is so important, because you're actually like spelling. It's like a mantra. It's like I relate to my name and my daughter's name and other names as like an invocation of a mantra. It's like every time it's repeated, we're repeating the original invocation. Lucian means bringer of light, and my daughter's Leonie Astra Bridget, which means the lioness of the stars and the high priestess. Like that as a name, every time she's called Leonie, we're repeating like a mantra the invocation of that original naming as parents of like what is it to be a lioness in the world today. So this piece, I think, is like the Sound Alliance of the timelessness of like, sound is the ancient future. Yeah, so.
Well, sound is how they move the pyramids.
Yes. Yeah.
Word that's like a grand vision of permeating through layers of reality of time, space.
Sound permeate.
That sort of embodies that omnipermanence.
And also, does the word sound have to be the first word? Like timeless, I'm just giving an example, timeless sound, or sound can be in the middle of the word. I think we have our mindset on that sound has to be the first word, and then followed by
that have sound in it.
Just yes, that sound in it.
The sound is like the grounding, like of the drum. Like sound is
exactly, and it could come on the second beat. It doesn't have to be the first beat. So timelessness sound. The beginning of sound.
Like holographic sound.
By Paul Hubbard. And then Paul's work is phenomenal. Yeah.
Well, this is a good conversation.
The teaching of sound. Mm.
You know what? Like
Sound teaches.
in sound definitely teaches. I always notice in with grandmother, I call it Jupiter's Casino. That gate you go through as you're transcending into different realms, and it's like this, like extremely like that journey. Like sound to me, sound has been a hyper present part of every single transcendent experience I've had. So it's just like that, you know, sound transcends, trans.
Can,
Transport.
Yeah.
can
So,
you imagine a world without sound?
Mm-mm.
I mean,
Well, that's a world without vibration. Everything. Yeah.
We vibrate, like our bodies vibrate, so we're never without sound, even if we don't hear it. It's
Yeah.
still there.
right.
Yes. Okay. Finally, it hit. Now it makes sense. Sound transcends. It means goes beyond. Sound goes beyond. So that kind of embodies what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just hadn't framed it quite like that. I was thinking of it as a different use of the term.
It's like it transcends everything. Emotional, physical.
All of it.
I love the word transmute better than transcend sometimes. I
Well,
feel like it's
I
a whole.
Hey.
We can make them all,
Actually, he said that.
we can have a
Putting
lot
good
of them.
words, there really are a lot.
Well, because everyone's gonna have a different resonance with words anyway. So
Exactly.
like it's gonna have like a menagerie of or a cornucopia of all these different words that have resonance with the word sound.
And it does transmute.
I feel like we do have a new vocabulary that's emerging though, and we could just stay open to the new words. I mean,
yeah.
English
Well,
has been inventing words for a while, so.
One of the big kind of hat trick objectives of the unified planet is to come up with the unified
Universal language.
Yeah, which is not just spoken; it's like using every sense we have through these Amore suits. I will geek out on that another time, but that's been like about time, given we're doing a civilizational shift, a civilizational pivot. It's a bit about time that we had a planetary language project that was that went beyond like the spoken word as like a very, very inefficient, like, you know, it's outdated that we have to wait in turn. So
Babel.
yeah.
Communicated through sound way before we communicated through words.
Yeah.
So, well, this is awesome, Andrea. Thank you so much for being the Sherpa here of this
Yeah.
incredible collective
Yes, very much.
people.
This is the
Wow.
Are you feeling, as we transition now into the Sound Portal space, are you feeling, Andrea, any support you'd like before tomorrow? You know, maybe what we could do is like an 8-minute presentation on like what we've come to.
Yeah.
And then that you could lead, and then anyone else that's been part of the alliance.
Yeah, I think kind of like popcorning in with stuff, like because everyone has different resonance and different experiences to bring to bringing sound out to communities, to everyone. Because I think also with Sound Alliance, there's so many other aspects of it, I mean, which we talked about yesterday, which is more the structure of things. And I think this is like the energy that we're working with right now.
There's some beautiful closing words that my father wrote in a letter to me before I was born. That I think is a good just a good thing for us to close, given what we were just discussing. And this is just a little paragraph of the letter. He said that loving and giving both flow outwards, out of oneself and to the loved one, the person given to. And in this outgoing act, the giver not merely finds fulfillment, but self-creation. A hell infinitely more horrifying than the conventional one of fire and brimstone would consist of being banished to eternal suspension in the void of outer space. In absolute nothingness, perceptual aloneness, unrelieved by any activity whatsoever, be it alternation of day and night, hot and cold, not even the boon of Satan's torments for company. Which is to say that far from being self-contained, we are utterly and vitally dependent on our environment, on others to relate with, and to sustain ourselves. So it's like without sound, like absence of sound would be torture. Like as a kind of way, like a worse, you know. So it's in that, you know, in and the sound of what the return to the womb, in the collective womb being something here that we could be brought into. We could even introduce like a creation story into the comic. Like the birth of Sonic could begin with the Big Bang, and we could have a whole like condensed theory of everything into sound. It could be really fun way of like.
I can talk to you more about that because I have some stuff that's in
Awesome.
parts of that. So, but
Awesome.
with everyone, I think this has been amazing. Like, thank you, big hugs, virtual hugs, sound hugs to everyone.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we will see you tomorrow. And invitation, please do invite anyone that you think could be add value to the next stage, which is Blossom, which will kicks off on the 1st of June. And obviously, no reason to slow down in the interim. You can, you know, self-organizing collective intelligence and all. But we will like try and wrap up, and then we'll put the presentations that are shared, we'll put them up on the website under upgrades, and the upgrades will get staged through the Seed Sprout Blossom Harvest stage, and so people can track the progress through the 8-week journey. And I'm really excited for tomorrow. For Shane and Amanda are going to be doing presentations for the Sound Technology Guild, which both relate closely here. And then Andrea, if you want to share on the WhatsApp any asks you have of the people here, and then we'll in particular as we go into next stage, how Psyche and Leo could fund some of this initial work of the Matrix.
I think there's so many different layers to this that I think like just putting this together, but then all the other tangents that come from it, and that everyone is playing the game in it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you for being such an amazing Sherpa here.
Thanks.
So
Thank you, beautiful.
well, if just in tradition, Serena, welcome Emil. I just wonder, Serena, would you mind closing out the Alliance meeting and opening up the portal meeting for anyone that can stay, just with maybe a Davy prayer or something similar? Would that feel?
Sure. I'm trying to think what's coming. Let's see. Okay, what's coming is we just are going through a retrograde in Venus that I believe hasn't happened this way since the past 12 years. So what's coming is a little mantra for Venus. So I'm just gonna pick a sound because I don't have my instruments near me. Shukraya Namaha Om Venus represents our ability to love and show devotion, and our ability to effectively express the inner divine ego through our interpersonal relationships. And I think that this has all been a really beautiful time for us to work on how we are connecting in this way. So let's all hold Venus in our breath for a moment. Take a big breath, fill your breath with air, and release on the snake with me. And
Of an angel. Thank you, Serena.
Hmm.
Such a highlight of our days together is when you sing. When you did the Davy prayer, said it was for me the other day. I was like a little kid being like, really? Thank you.
It's so fun to I guess there's something that I think I wanted to, it kind of sets the tone for what you were talking about in terms of the process of inquiry that I was hearing just now as you guys were talking about different languages. And I truly believe when we take a moment to inquire within our voice, something will come out. And so this has been really fun as a direct experience to see what comes out of me. So thank you, Lucian.
Mm. Well, recapping on the day, we had the final seed stage of food, and it is rock and rolling. It is like eight projects, like epic kind of momentum behind some things that have been highlighted, like a beautiful synthesis basically that we're bringing into the first seed stage upgrade for food tomorrow, which we can share around. Amanda kicked us off this morning amazingly, and then we went into the Sound Technology Guild. Shane, Amanda, and Andrea were part of that, and Shane and Amanda are going to be presenting tomorrow after the Sound Alliance. Sound Helix, which is just awesome. Can't wait for you all to hear about that. And then Amanda's going to be presenting like an experiential culture layer, like an immersive experience design layer that can go on top that I think will really capture everyone's imagination. And then we've moved into, many of you were here, but we've moved into the Sound Alliance, and Andrea's been doing a phenomenal job of like synthesizing, note taking, starting with the science of sound matrix, coming up with a language framework, and essentially it's like an industry body around sound and sound practitioners. And then we looked at this awesome idea of Project Echo, which would be around how we can like, kind of bounce the memes around this. And one of the things that came up was creating a cartoon series around like sound superheroes, including like Sonic and Echo and sonar and siren, and like that we could basically create an origin story through to the now that would be a parallel of like the hero's journey that we're going through in society using sound as a frame, and like do things like introduce Gotham City and like the Batman being like, are you hearing the call? So like some really cool things that in not a lot of amount of time together. So now we come to our final sprout stage before we come together tomorrow for the Sound Portal Guild. And one thing that I think Shane could bring in is we had some awesome conversations around the most epic art car ever to be created, which is actually hopefully could be an art train, basically a creation of the much mythed peace train or vision train that's in paintings and songs for a long time. And we were discussing this being potentially a Tesla truck that would pull a series of carriages that would be this shamanka, like the feminine shaman, and it would be a way like a kind of moving a mobile myth, machine that would be able to be the kind of like the further bus of our generation and connect communities, be able to drive distances and like bring sound and sound technology and sound healing to like people at various festivals, etc. And all those connections there with Sound Portal. So that's been I think that's my synthesis of today. But over to you now, Serena and Emil. Thank you so much for being Sherpas.
Yeah, it's so cool to hear how there's a build on everyone's ideas and everything's converging into something that what I can already see is going to be a unified project with multiple parts. I wanted to let Emil share some things he came up with yesterday, but also go into a quick synthesis of what I was hearing yesterday from our conversations. So we talked about, you know, this kind of oscillation between the actual space dictating the content and then the content dictating the space when it comes to like a mobile unit. And then we introduced Shane's idea, which I got to Google the Mayan warrior and I saw the art car, how cool, had my own beautiful ideas of what it could look like and what a train would be with installations on the top, and what a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful vision to have. And I'm sure there's a lot more to it that I didn't get to hear from Shane. But what I was hearing yesterday was sort of a juxtaposition between what we have in terms of like a Pegasus to start with and whether we play with this, and then also kind of the broader sound to the commons sort of, you know, effort. And so it was interesting. In the call, we began to talk about the Pegasus and the shamanka idea. And, you know, we all kind of started wrapping around, okay, hey, let's try to like maybe test one of these efforts. And at the same time, we had this different wavelength of thought of like, you know, let's not get so attached to the space. The point is to get out there and expose people to a vision and a message and bring the sound out. And we talked about the resistance of, you know, people wanting to be touched and COVID and all the different things that are going on, and how this car right now may not be wanted to be entered in, but really could support kind of facilitating a vision in terms of the decoration or the design on the outside, representing unified planet and representing sound in different ways, but then also instruments come out and we have a few sound healers actually giving exposure to random public places, kind of this flash mob idea that we talked about. And so I kind of wanted to just, you know, check in with everyone in terms of direction, because what I was hearing was, okay, the fastest way to go and start doing this is just to get out there, bring a bunch of instruments. Someone was like, I have a Suburban, I have this, let's just go. Let's go test the field and see what happens. And then the other side was like, well, the testing is part of our way to receive funding for something like the car. And so what emerged in my mind is that there's two kind of ways of looking at like how a project could get funded. And one is sort of creating this exposure and wrapping people around the idea and kind of having it be a community project. And the other one is kind of taking a direct vertical, right? Outsourcing an architecture who's going to be spending, 6 to 8, days building something and get it done really fast and have a proof of concept that gets built into a design rather quickly with different artists and people who are already in the field that have installations that could bring this together. So I wanted to, share kind of that's what I listened to yesterday in the call and where we were going with our ideas. And just, leave room for people's thoughts on that, and also what you're feeling in terms of that, and what you guys think about what it means to go into the field and how we should approach the next steps.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what everyone has to say, and I want to share the Google Doc we worked on last night and this morning that I began, and then I passed on, got feedback on from Serena and Lucinda. I just made it so anyone can check the link, so you can take a look at this. And I was just adding a couple more things as per what Serena and Lucinda suggested. And this, I think, could be a really good thing to finish Sprout with, have this document developed and, edited and also added on to. Let's see you, Andrea. So feel free to produce that, or if you have any other things you'd like to share in response to what Serena just said, please do so, because we're really excited that how this is coming together. Yeah, Dominic.
Thank you. And I really appreciate the work you've both been doing on this as well. I just want to acknowledge that. That when I get to see in the evening, kind of everything you've written up and just the clarity that comes from being able to go back on it. So it's really appreciated. And Serena, that was a really beautiful summary as well of yesterday. I'm kind of in the, I thought there was some amazing ideas. I've definitely personally been gravitating towards the outside space or holding more externally, not just because of COVID, but I just think the exposure is that much greater and the experience can be very different. But I got so fixed on that I hadn't explored the fun with having this internal space. So definitely I'm opening up more to that as another phase, because that could be so exciting. So I kind of got a little stuck in the outdoor thing, because that's always been my vision and my fantasy of having these outdoor things. Lake Merritt was one I was telling you all about, and I wanted to do that. All I needed was like a platform that I could set up, comfortably and safely on. The idea that Shane's putting forward of the flash mob, I don't like flash mob because I don't think it feels like it's what we're doing, or that it's related to sound, but a lot of that concept is there. So I'm thinking of like something related to sound, like pop-up resonance center or resonance events, or something that defines the spontaneous, but is related to sound. But it's not, and I think Lucinda said this, is like this orchestrated event where we all get together and everyone's like, the whole flash mob is like everyone learning the same move. So it's this surprise element. But we can have these pop-up events that we can let people know, ahead of time. It's like this sort of guerrilla PR, like, we put the message out, we get onto Facebook Place, we tell our friends, and we have the general people there. So we're always going to get a body of people. And for me, that just really feels like exposure to a greater audience. We can always have people that we know that we want to share this with, but there's always going to be the sort of passers-by. I was invited to the Mariposa Festival in Mariposa, just up in the hills. And there was sort of Mental Health Awareness Month. So I was working with an organization that focuses on mental health. as part of the sort of local hospital. And so we just set up the bowls for 2 days and just played, took turns, 3 of us would play. And just kids coming by, I've got some beautiful pictures from it. You know, these 2 boys dragged their mum over and said, "Mum, you need this," and made her lay down, and she fell asleep for 20 minutes. And she was like, that was phenomenal. And it was just such a beautiful thing to see her boys wanting her to take this time. So, you know, that outside aspect of watching people walk by at this kind of, you know, festival, lots going on, food, everything, and just walking past us and sort of doing a double take, trying to figure out what's going on, and then being pulled in towards it. It was like magic. It was the kids were just like, whoa, what is this? And just setting up a space where people could lay down and could just really sort of take it in and take the time, even if it's for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So I think kind of all of this formulates together, and having the experience of having some instruments on there that we can bring out. Because the other thing I found is that people always want to play and have a go, and oh, you know, and it's amazing to them if they can get a bowl going. So yeah, so that's some of what's been coming up for me. So yes to all of these things, and this is all how we kind of get the message out there. And I think it's an easy step for us to do, given that we've potentially even got the transport, or whether it's the trailer, Pegasus, whatever that looks like.
Thank you, Dom. One other thing I wanted to share before I forgot, and it came to me as you were speaking, because you were talking so much about connection in general, was that Danielle brought up a really good point about, you know, the sound gifting element of what this is, but then also this also being a unique opportunity to get people interested, involved, following, curious. And so thinking out of a way to keep them engaged. What does that look like for Unified Planet and for the individual healers, and kind of what is the takeaway for someone who would want to, you know, actually come more into the dimension of sound after being exposed to it. And then one other point was, which you know, is the languaging, which I know that we've got a lot of conversation around already, but is our target audience someone who's, for example, been to Burning Man and knows what Mayan Warrior is and has probably been to sound healing events? Or is our target audience someone else that might not know those things and might be exposed to the power of sound outside of a hospital, for example, for the first time? So really making a distinction between how to use the language in a way that can resonate with someone who needs to be educated and informed, versus an assumption that they know already what's happening. That's important, I think.
I think we're really looking for the people that would like to be part of playing this game, that are kind of ready to play their role in systems change and reimagining. So I see the sound portals as a kind of like an experience anchor to bring people into these transformative experiences. That there is this team of people that are having like amazing fun, but like really serious around systems change. And so you know, the Burning Man community is kind of easy to access, and they're like early adopters and kind of will get this kind of thing. But I wouldn't like design something specifically for that audience. I think it goes broader into like public art, public experience design, doing things like we would love, like in Alamo Square, for example, we would love to have a sound portal where we would, for example, have this idea to work with Glide, because what dear friend of ours and like advisor is on the board of Glide, to work with the unhoused population of San Francisco to train them in storytelling and have them go up to people that were having an experience of a sound portal and invite them to tell their story from 2030, and do something that my grandfather did in India, where he had this community, he created this community for leprosy patients that became the world's largest community around leprosy. Serena, you'll know Baba Amte. And what they were so successful with all of their kind of cottage industries and farming, their fields had 4 times the yield of local farmers, that what they did was build a 4-faculty college, basically a university. The leprosy patients built it, made the bricks and the cement with their own hands from their own, like, digging in the ground, from selling the crops in the market. And what happened is my dad arrived and they were like, we're building this 4-faculty college as a gift to the able-bodied. And so how we can create these kind of transformative experiences where we're literally flipping people's biases on its head. And so instead of people coming to San Francisco being like, oh, the homeless problem is such a big problem, which it is, we're actually like, in 2030 and through these sound portal experiences, flipping the script, changing the narrative, that here, it's completely role reversing. And there's things like that we can layer into these experiences and create public art. It's like once we've got some core infrastructure, we can still keep building on it and build more and more. I'd love to see like a kind of a workforce of people. Like, imagine if the homeless population of San Francisco could start earning stars for their contribution to this, and it would be like I can definitely see that happening.
Yeah.
Becoming something, and then in doing so, accessing food from all of the local regenerative farms, and like layer on every piece onto it. So, I think the rituals that we create, etc.
I'd love to share something around this because Dominic, you really reminded me of something, and some of you might know about this. Oops, my connection was slowing down a bit.
We got it.
Turn off the video for a sec. So, you want to hear me? Give me a thumbs up. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you. Sorry.
Great. So I know Shane knows about this, and maybe a few others of you, but I participated for many years in a group called the Gong Sanctuary that would go around to festivals and set up basically a circle of gongs that throughout the duration of the festival, there would be 20-minute sessions where people came and lay down and received gong sound healing, maybe between 20 and 35 people at a time, through 6 hours of the day. We have 2 3-hour shifts. Other sound healing as well. But this began by just a proposal to the festivals. And they were like, oh yeah, if you want to set it up and do it, like, you can. And it was so popular that it just like kind of blew the festival's minds how much people loved what was happening. And within a year, they were getting funded like almost, I'm not sure, but thousands of dollars, maybe up to like $10,000 to bring a large group, albeit. And we were asking for donations too, and sometimes doing quite well with that. But I think my point is that, it captures people quick. And even in the transformational festival scene, there's a lot of people that haven't experienced a powerful sound bath before. And like with Dominic saying, like the kids going like, Mom, like just feel how good this is. It'll draw attention quickly. And gongs in of themselves are also a very good instrument to use because they're so powerful. And even when we were near amplified speakers, the gongs could still be all that was heard while we were at some of the peak moments. But we wouldn't even with a lot of background noise, it wouldn't be as much as like bass amps at a festival. But I think something involving gongs and also crystal bowls, because they carry a powerful resonance. And pop-ups, we'd have a shade structure, but that format that we brought with the Gong Sanctuary to a bunch of festivals could be pretty simply replicated as a starting point to bring to parks or other public spaces.
That feels dope. I like that.
I love that. And And then another thing that emerged is that we are actually having a distant sort of jam session tonight with some musicians, Mark, Dominic, Lucinda, who couldn't make it today. So I really think that that's just something to highlight because it's bringing us together. We are going to play with this creativity, and I think it'll help infuse more of this weaving that we're doing with all the projects. Anybody else have anything they want to share?
This came to me actually right before you guys jumped on the call. I want to share it first before I forget about it. This is going to go on the opposite side of the spectrum, just because when everybody was talking about the previous topic, I was reminded of an article that I read some time ago. I think it'd be especially from the mobile unit perspective, there's this anechoic chamber, I think somewhere in Germany, that is the most precise anechoic chamber ever, where it cancels out all noise, and you can literally hear your blood pumping, like, because it's so like potent in the way that it cancels out noise, that you can hear every aspect of the sounds that are going on within your own body. Why I bring this up is because on the other side of this whole kind of like, let's create a mobile unit that creates sound. Well, to the other device, you can create a mobile unit that creates absolute silence, and be able to create that and almost kind of create like a sound challenge, like, because part of what the article was talking about was that in the anechoic chamber, I think the longest duration of a person's experience is no more than 35 minutes, because you literally will start going insane because it's so quiet. So as like another kind of PR thing / like kind of creating more awareness to sound, you can almost like do this as a sound challenge of like, how long can you last inside of the chamber, and like getting people to go into it and all that kind of stuff. So because I think to create an anechoic chamber is actually not that hard. I mean, it would take a little bit of sound design depending on the structure that you're using, but it's more of just like the riveting and all the other stuff that goes inside of it that cancels out noise. So especially
Shane, just as a kind of like a rookie here, I think it's cool, but it's not as cool as these being like sound portals, and like float tanks and things like that like have some of that effect. I think if we just want to maximize like low-hanging fruit, sound portals, I think like them being places of transcendent, like places where we could bring in a partnership with Lucia Light and other sound technologies and things like that would be a way to at least start, and then maybe we could have like a yin yang, like almost like you're going from you go for, in bathhouses you go from the hot to the cold. We could maybe like have that as part of the set, is now you go and experience silence.
Cool. Yeah, and we were also considering, writing down a lot of use cases today and next week as we expand on the possibilities for this. So real quick, just wondering if people have checked out that document that I shared in the chat. We have there a summary, a mission statement, and 4 terms that I forget what we called that. We're kind of like, and also I want to hone in on how we're branding this a little bit too. because I think that's going to be something that defines us a little more than just like people showing up at a park with a bunch of instruments. Is how is the unit itself designed, so they get that this is a thing and is expanding these sound portals, and also as a way of promoting this idea of the unified planet. I think as something that, you know, let's go like, hey, we're playing this game. I had a vision this morning of even like a billboard in San Francisco that said something like, unified planet, are you interested in playing the up game? Something like that, something that lets people, brings more of this concept into the mainstream of we are a unified planet, and allowing that into the culture more and more.
Yeah, we could do a billboard with the Unified Planet Oath.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Wonderful. I also had a vision this morning of the actual portal being alive, and is Amanda still here on the call? Hi, are you good? You're here. I had, one of the first experiences we had was when Amanda started us off in the beginning of this game. And I had this vision two visions. One, that somebody could walk in and come into the surround sound of Amanda's experience, but then that there's light kind of playing in, and there's a mister coming in with some tridoshic aromatherapy, and there's these visuals of nature, whatever it might be. And then Amanda could appear too through the portal. And so I just, anything is really possible. And it was so fun to play. And when I looked at the Mayan warrior thing this morning, my mind just kind of lit up again, right? There's so much opportunity here. So I think that what's really cool is that the sound portal could serve as a way for sound healers to also share their projects, right? Have one of the programs of content be, if Amanda would be open to recording something for it, and have that be something that's in it and outside of it, amplified in different ways. So yeah, just really wanting to like throw in that we have so much talent here within this group of these 3 guilds that we can also facilitate some of that content through that. I think Lucinda's here. Welcome, Lucinda.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm late. I've been out and about. I lost my battery in my phone.
I think you're on mute.
Oh,
sorry.
Glad to have you. Thanks for joining. Yeah, so kind of leaving the floor open. Does anybody have anything they want to share, or any suggestions on direction for the next 50 minutes of our time in terms of what we can be amped with speaking tomorrow? Of course, Emil and I will download again tonight and get things ready, but just really wanted to leave the space for that today.
And anything you say can carry on for next week as well. Go ahead, Dominic.
I was actually I don't know, because I missed the call whether Mark had a chance to talk to you about the amazing system he's working on with, we spoke about the other night, with the speakers set up and Ableton Live. So I don't know, it's really exciting. So I just wanted to make sure if you'd be willing to share.
You had a presentation, Mark, that I saw, and I was wondering if you got a chance to share that. The slides with the gaming amazing project that's already underway.
Okay, so I think what you're speaking of is the document or the image I was just trying to share with you guys a couple days ago of the gaming truck. There's a business called I think it's just called Game Truck. And I just happened to do a research for it, and I saw that one was for sale. So the idea of that one there is it could be both audio and visual. So that is a proof of concept that we could look at for a mobile system that's kind of already like in existence, and it would satisfy 2 needs if you wanted to do something visual and again auditory. It would only need a little bit of modification on the audio to make it more, I think, powerful and a powerful experience. And then what Dominic is speaking of is I had a conversation with him because we're both kind of like audio DJ geeks that, we geeked out on something I shared with him, which we'll talk more about later on tonight. But I think down the road, I want to plant the seed of potentially a system that I'm working on. It comes out of an experience I had in San Francisco at a company called Envelop. And I don't know that I've shared this with you guys yet or not, but in that space of that room, there's 32 speakers positioned around the room, sub-bass cabinets, 24 speakers that are in the surround, and then 4 speakers in the ceiling pointed down. So you're completely wrapped in sound. So that's 32 speakers. And right now I'm working on, and I finally got my cables, my cords. My last, can you guys see this? My pro cords came yesterday. So I'm actually going to be able to start beta testing this, where I can define every speaker is a focal point that I can, and I was just, while we were talking earlier, I'm actually envisioning using all of you guys that are the actual sound healers and do some recordings to where if you're in this room or the space that I can do inside or outside, indoor, outdoor, I'm going to be able to set it up, and sonically I can like record Dominic, for example, and have him start off in quadrant 1 playing whatever you're playing as far as bowls. And this is again digitally recorded. And it can be both digitally pre-recorded or it can be done live as well. The sound system can be a reinforcement of stuff that's going on live, or it can be pre-recorded to be played back in a space wherever it's set up, and it'll be powerful. And by that I mean Dominic will be in one corner playing his bowls, and then I can have Serena singing something coming up from what sounds like from the clouds, kind of lowering itself, coming down, flying, and then moving around the room. I could have a drummer that's beating a drum, making it sound like they're walking around the room. So this is all technology that's available right now that is sitting in my studio space right now that I just got to put together some components of it. And the components are really just doing recordings of individuals like you artists, both the voice, and I'm looking forward to recording anybody who wants to anyway, of course, no obligation, but it's pretty exciting because I can have, like, after Dominic plays his bowls, Lucinda from the other side starts playing her harp, and it gets louder and louder and louder as it sounds like she's bringing the harp to the center. I can make it sound like it's dropping down. I mean, just imagine a joystick with audio. The software with Ableton and with this Envelop Live software, it's fucking magic. So I can try to explain it, or I can just show you guys. And I think I'll be able to show you guys in about 2 or 3 weeks what the fuck I'm talking about.
Yeah, David Gibson.
Thank you.
Something similar, and it's really amazing conceptually. I think you and him would get a really big kick out of chatting about that. It's awesome. Thank you.
Lucian, this picture is like incredible. So the one that you just sent, I don't know if people have WhatsApp on their computers, but I do. And the Shiva, the Shakti, the Ida, the Pingala, the Sushumna Nadi, I'm seeing all of it, and golden pyramids. It's kind of getting me excited.
Just to wait till Dan said this. This was speaking of sound and visual portals. This is a dome that Unified Planet will bring in. It's currently like just in a storage container just off the playa, which is annoying. But it's a 26-foot dome that Amanda Sage and I collaborated on creating. It's 3D mapped. And when you shine lights through it, you literally have a psychedelic experience just by being surrounded in this womb of art. It's called the Galactic Ambassador. And we could put it up in the middle of like somewhere and like turn it into a portal womb. It's pretty amazing. So
hey, I got a question, please, Lucian. So I'm looking at the image on WhatsApp. So it's that psychedelic experience. Is that wrapped around a cage or something? What is that?
It's wrapped around a dome, a Bucky Fuller dome.
Is that what? Okay, so I want to fill that with sound.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I can totally curate
Perfect.
that.
That let's like this is just foreplay, but let's because it's in a shipping.
This is a tease.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a
But,
tease. It's
but
like
we will get we'll get that because that was a beautiful baby of ours. But I also know how to get a bunch of those. Like we could have a whole bunch of those printed, and it could become a thing. Like I was envisaging when we were doing that we would have like at conferences. Like we had it for Burning Man, but I was thinking at conferences, people do the kind of boring booths. We could go to exhibition of like like I don't know, let's just say Dreamforce, and we could put a series of these like booths up that would be like unlike anything people have ever seen. And so we could bring sound portals into conferences and actually get paid by the conferences to create these transcendent experiences. It could be a whole business model for the unified planet.
yeah, and you could like infuse the logo of the company into the installation really easily, and they would pay a lot of money for that visibility in that way.
Yeah. We've got a lot of like there's Amanda Sage is one of my best friends, a total sister, and basically she's in for anything we want to do. She's like we talked about like there's a few different projects that would be cool to blend in with the Sound Portal Guilds, because from a kind of visual storytelling perspective, one really cool one is we want to create a new alphabet where every letter would be visually portrayed as a history of that concept. So like M would be Matra, which is like the root of mother, and that we actually like all matter actually linguistically comes from mother, which is like a really powerful story. And so like each letter of the alphabet would be telling a visual story. And so we could, as we create these sound portals, we could layer in things like a new alphabet into like how people come into this experience. There's Amanda's amazing and would be a great resource. She's an incredible visionary artist.
I just had Lucy, and I had this image. I don't know if any of you guys had this when you were growing up, but where I was growing up, there was all these walking paths, and you would go on the trail, and every few, I don't know, like there'd be like maybe 10 stations through the trail, and every few steps you would take, you'd come to like a different exercise component, whether it was like a bell or a bar or something you could actually do more than walk with. And I just had this image of several designs on like a walking trail, kind of as like a live tarot deck, but a live sound deck kind of coming to life.
I love that.
Beautiful.
and one of the things that is coming out of the food, they haven't even split into guilds and the alliance yet, but it's already coming out as an upload. It's called Mindful Meals, and it's kind of think of it as a tarot deck, ritual deck that will go. It's nascent, right? It's seed stage, but it would take people on a ritual to connect them with their food, and like look at like where the food comes from, and like we could potentially layer into that deck a journey to connect deeper into community, to connect into food, and potentially even have challenges where the only way to get the next round of food is to pass a challenge, which could layer on all the other games that so each one of these ideas are kind of like stackable for the others, so that if we had a tarot deck, it could mix sound and community and food, obviously. So I think there'll be lots of fun ways for us to introduce ritual here.
Beautiful.
Around that. So with regards to tomorrow, how are you feeling, Serena, in terms of anything you need support-wise for what we thought we'd do is like 8-minute presentations and then go into Q&A, and like afterwards anyone that's been part of the of this guild can share, and you can decide who if it's just one person presenting or if it's if you want to present together as well. Amanda is actually going to kick us off in the morning at 11 a.m. with the Sound Journey, and then we're going to go into the Sound Alliance, then the Sound Technology Guild with Shane and Amanda, and then us.
Awesome. That sounds like what a lovely, lovely, lovely morning. I can't wait to join.
Yeah. And please invite anyone. What I'm going to do is create a WhatsApp invitation, and I'll put that on Facebook. But anyone that you think would benefit from being part of this collective sprouting, please invite. We can have add more people here to that could be helpful.
Yeah, and if you tag me on Facebook, I'll live video it as well.
Great, I'll do that. Yeah, we're going to live stream the whole thing, and so everybody can live share, and so we can reach. There'll probably be at least 1,000 people, if not more, will watch tomorrow.
Amazing.
We're starting at 11.
So it's at 11 till 12:30.
11 till 12:30.
11 to 12.
Yeah.
Quick question.
I don't
Quick
have
question.
Any questions for you? I wanted to go over some basic things with the group to get anyone's input.
Quick question. Are we actually meeting tomorrow at 2:30? Is it just part of a presentation? I want to be clear on that. I'm not really clear right now.
Yeah, sorry. This is the last day of the Sprout meeting. Tomorrow is just the collective Sprout, which is at 11 a.m.
So we can sit on that one, but it's at 11, not at 2:30. There's only 11 to 1:30.
Yeah, tomorrow is 11 till 12:30.
12:30. Okay.
And then, if you want to meet any point, you that's like outside of whatever, like as you like. But it's like we're as far as a process to try and make sure we're inviting everybody that's been part of Sound and anyone that would like to be involved. The collective Sprout. Amanda.
Oh.
You're muted.
Yeah, I have a quick question. For you, Lucian. We don't have to go over it now, but how we've been talking about this mobile unit, and one of the viable options is using the mobile unit you have. And regarding that, coming into the practical side of it, like what kind of exchange would be right for that, and does that make the most sense? What else would be the question more for next week? That's been coming up for me because we're going to start moving forward. Like, are we going to get that from you? What would we exchange with you for?
So I bought it. I think I bought it for like 11,000. I'd be, for me, it's like, this is just like, I'd love to see the trailer transformed in this way. So I'm happy to kind of do an IOU and accept stars for it. And so we don't need to raise the money now for that. I could basically like put it as into the Unified Planet in exchange for like, how about we could create some magical number for it that is like a little less than what I paid for it, kind of thing. And that could be the first purchase of stars, which would be kind of appropriate.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then be like, what level of modification would be okay to do on it would be another question. And then
I'm pretty relaxed on this. Make it epic. Make it historic.
Cool. So you're not trying to you wouldn't want to limit that. That's the main thing I was asking.
I think it would be kind of cool that if it would still be able to be functional as a trailer. Like, I don't really care for the kitchen, but like having a bed in there would be kind of cool for things that it converts into a bed thing. But again, if this isn't a fit, this is just something that's an easy decision because it's only with me. But it can, like if there's a better option that you feel like, don't feel pressured to, for this. It's just, it's a resource that would be kind of cool to make magic from.
Yeah. Great. That's exactly what I was, checking in about.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's good, and that'll come up again next week, I'm sure. The other things I wanted to check in about are regarding not anymore specifically with Evolution. I know you have to go in a moment. For the document, while we're all here, I would love anyone to, since this is going to be a central point of the presentation, I believe, if anyone has anything that they feel clearly needs to be added, or there's some certain wording that feels like it doesn't put out the message in a clear way, or it feels off to you, that feedback would be really important, because I don't think any of us would want you feeling like, any of you feeling like, like this doesn't feel like a representation of something I support. Good to bring that out now, or email us later. So
can I just make sure before we begin that, I know Amanda wanted to say something, so we just make sure that she can
Amanda, you're really staticky. We can't hear you. No. Sorry.
Very good, man. Oh, there you go.
Amanda is asking, Lucian, is tomorrow's experience going to be connected to One Earth?
No, it's not. One Earth Live is on Saturday and Sunday, and let's see if we might be able to do some dot connecting there, because I'm waiting. Are you joining any? Let's connect offline on that. But we're doing a festival this weekend that was called, Amanda nailed it right now, because it is actually called One Earth Live, except there's no live element, which is weird. So we were proposing to do 8 hours of live main stage, but they were like, we can't handle live.
Wow.
So but we're still hoping to do a 2030 lunch, in which case we'll invite people. We'll figure that out. We'll do it, organize it in the next 2 days if it happens. So
Great.
Thanks for that, Amanda. You should totally perform there. If we get that slot, I'll be in touch. So cool. I just want to say from all of us, from Brian and Josh and I, like, this is such a, like, the organization that's coming here, and the fact that you're meeting up to jam together brings such like joy to our hearts. That this is, that it's moving, and it is exactly what it's intended, which is, communities having impact. So we're just so over the moon, and we're going to go meditate, and then we kick off our community leaders dinner portal tonight, which is going to be great. And then we will be all ready for tomorrow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much.
I appreciate you.
Deep gratitude.
Yeah.
Enjoy your
Thank you so much. Much love to everyone. And I'll share around this visual now that I'll share it in all the WhatsApps, and anyone that you want to invite, please do, and you can add them to the calendar invite as well.
Can you share the picture that's behind you as well? The one with that one, because I think that has a very huge sound component to it.
Yeah, with pleasure. There's a lot of amazing work from Casey here. So
Yeah, I've seen them. It's awesome. Thank
yeah,
you.
cool, awesome. All right, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Lucien.
This is amazing.
Take care.
Yeah, thank you.